I thought that help was here, but it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles, and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reid came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of 3-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are.
stagnate, a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph or Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren. Say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't.
Perfect time for you to burn the bridge to self-forgiveness. Now's the chance, take a stand, stay your hand before you cast another vote for corporate interest. Another vote that chokes your hopes of owning your own home or opening a business. They love to say their hands were tied, the stars just weren't aligned for them to get their votes in line to see their promises delivered. But they killed it in an instant. Bills don't die by accident, they're all assassinated on behalf of the congressionally kismet, by some lobbyists who see themselves as agents of clandestine fate, not fences in a prison. Dealing in the stolen goods of sleeping slaves and trading on the futures of their children. Betting on a spread of daily dead where every grave's creating profit by the millions. For some fascists lurking in the wings and all of their affiliates. And every Etna demigod our senators conduct their darkest dealings with. It really gets impossible to document or fingerprint, 'cause it isn't just a pattern of corruption, it's the very fabric making up the structure of this
Who are these people?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Iron and News with my co-host, as always, the lovely Care Bear, Collin Radix-Carter. How are you, friend?
What up?
I'm also here
doing?
with two new lovely people from Dissidence. We got Keaton, Weiss, and Russell Dobular, I hope. How do you say that last name?
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. Dobular. You got it.
Yeah. Cool.
You got it. My name's Easy. Thank you so much. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, it was, we had a good stream with you last night. I mean, as good as election nights can go, you know.
Right.
So
And 24 hours later, we have mostly, I guess, more information. Since I think we kind of started last night just at the beginning, and now we're at the tail end now. So actually, how did the rest of your stream go? And I saw that you did a recap this morning on your channel. How did that go?
It went great. We had a very hostile debate over immigration between our friend Anish Shivani and Marcel Dixon. So some sparks flew there. We went for 8 hours. We went until 2:30 in the morning.
Serious. That got
No,
pretty serious.
Yeah, we were prepping because I had a watch party in person. I went to a restaurant just by my house. I went to for a couple hours, came back, did some prep for the show tonight with Reef, and we were kind of listening in a little bit to your guys' stream, and like I don't think I went to bed until like 2, maybe close to 3, and you were still going. So I was just kind of like, okay. Like, no, I have to go to bed. So, and you went on stream this morning. So
Yeah, we did a stream this morning. We thought we should just give our take on the results in, less than 8 hours, so that if people wanted to see our take, they wouldn't have to sit through an 8-hour replay of an election night watch party.
Right.
So yeah, we gave some thoughts this morning. All in all, we probably produced Russell, about 16 hours of midterm related content this week between the live stream, all the preview shows and things like that. So yeah, we definitely put the time in this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We proved our chops, man. We
yeah.
rode that audience all night long.
I've done those long, like I think I did 6 hours for 420. I've done some long ones. They're brutal, like you're wondering who's gonna bring you food. You got to get the bucket ready. Like it's weird days,
Yeah.
But
Especially when right in the middle it erupts into a slugfest between between two guests. It was very surreal.
You just gotta like
by that
start with like
by
no
that
eye
time
poking.
it was getting to the crazy time of night.
Yeah.
That was what, around midnight? It's like around the witching
No,
hour.
that was a little earlier. Marcel came on, I think 10 to 10:30 or 10:30 to 11, something like that.
Yeah. I saw you had Pat the Burner and Leigh too. Leah.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah. Wish they were better, but they used to be a lot better, and then the entirety of politics decided to fall apart. So, it's fun times. But anyway, we brought some stuff for you this evening. You want to go over it, Collin?
Sure. So we actually do appreciate you guys being here because we are going to be very transparent. We know of obviously like the big people, politicians, going for a re-election or, trying to be elected. So actually kind of glad you're here to kind of give a little more of your take. So yeah, we're going to do our version of our recap regarding the midterms. And then for me, I don't want to do this. I don't like talking about TYT, but I saw this article that Anna Kasparian wrote in Newsweek early in the week regarding crime that just really pissed me off to no end. So we're going to talk about it and put her in the right spot, hopefully, as far as what she should be talking about or thinking in terms of being quote unquote on the left. And then Reef, what you got?
I got a short story from Chris Hedges, which is rare. Normally he writes like a couple of novels to read, but I figured since he gave us a short one, it was worth looking at. And it seems pertinent with midterms and stuff. Talking about who really destroyed democracy. It's a good read. And I don't know if people were paying attention, but like COP27 is still kind of happening over there in Egypt. Interesting, some stories already from that, so we'll get into it. I don't think people are ready for it. But yeah,
Did they solve the climate? They solved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Kill all the poor people mainly. That's their move. Then it should be fine.
England has a brown prime minister now. I have faith.
Yeah. The most, what is he? The most affluent prime minister they've ever had.
Yes.
Like the most wealthy. Like,
yes.
And his wife is like also.
I'm sorry if you're not inspired by that, you're a Nazi.
Like
I had no idea we had agreed to go on the air with Nazis.
Yeah.
We're toddlers. After
all. But yeah. Oh well, there is one in this one, but we'll know who when we see him. But anyway, you want to get started?
It's like Find Waldo.
I know, right? Oh, he'll be easy.
Look for the Nazi in this picture.
Waldo's a lot harder to find. But anyway, I'm down to get started. Otherwise, it's gonna be another long night.
So ultimately, and I think this is no surprise to any of us or most of y'all, it wasn't the red wave that people were expecting, and I pulled this, I think at around 6 this evening. So it looks like I'll say this, it's still very possible that Republicans can take over the Senate even by a little bit. But so right now they lost a seat, and then Dems gained a seat. Well, basically, it's looking like at least Dems might lose maybe at least a seat, but that's still up in the air for right now. And then
other way, why does it do that to you every time? I don't know.
I don't know why this does this to me. Because
it loves you.
Yeah.
Is it gonna go back the other way now?
Oh, hold on. Wait a second, because I might have it on the wrong slide.
That's why we keep trying to recruit an intern.
I know, right?
Well, now it's time for your sound drop. We were supposed to have soundboard wars tonight, but we forfeited that to you guys. So you guys win because our soundboard is only accessible through our StreamYard. And we're not on our StreamYard.
We win by default. Take that, soundboard people.
You win by default. We pussied out. So you win.
But yeah, we like the soundboards over here. It can be soundboards sometimes. You can do too much. It's like salt. You gotta season it right.
True.
Yeah. Exactly. Sure. Yeah. No, you have to pepper it in at the right moments. You have to use discretion. You don't want to overexploit it. You got to pepper it in when it's surprising.
Yes, sir. Hold on, let me do this, and then
BTS folks, this is.
Otherwise, you're gonna sound like drive time radio
when shit doesn't work. All right, let's see now. There we go.
Nice.
All right, now we're good. Beautiful. I think I had the wrong window open with the
wrong.
Was that your PIN?
Yeah.
Bank account up there?
Social Security.
They would get a screenshot of that.
So anyway, so Senate looks like it'd probably be about even. House though, it looks like Republicans, look at that red, looking like they're on track to take over the House as predicted, by pundits, and again, not a huge surprise.
All right, I just want to say we've started to do like little ranty things. I might do one on this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I actually said during our marathon stream, because I don't know if you guys know how Sean Patrick Maloney basically whacked out Mondaire Jones, took his district, and then he lost. Okay, so I said on the air, that because he's a corporate Democrat, a good standing, the media would probably not get into that when he lost and not get into how he had fucked the Democrats. And no sooner did I say that, basically the next day, Newsweek did an article about how these 3 House seats in New York might flip. And really, this is a domino effect of what Maloney did. They did not say one fucking word about his culpability. Not one. They covered the specific subject of those House seats and managed not to talk about that. That is a masterclass in how propaganda works.
Yeah.
This is why these shit libs, if there is one common denominator, they still do not realize that the corporate media is state media. They still don't get that. That is really their most defining characteristic. So they read an article like that, they think they got the news. It's not the news.
No.
It's a manufactured narrative that actually is patently false and not telling you what really happened. The whole article is speculating on why this would have been and the demographics of upstate and the mood of the year, and everything but what this motherfucker actually did. Because it's all access media. It's all the reporter wants to get invited to the parties. You know, they don't want to lose their access. So, you know, he's in good standing. He's connected. They're just not going to talk about that. It was really amazing to see an article literally. Like, it's one thing to just not even talk about the subject, but to talk about that subject, it would be like writing an article about Nixon and not mentioning Watergate.
Yeah. Yep.
Very bizarre.
I mean, now the Republican House just gets to go, look at what we did as they come into the, you know, main election in 2 years. Like, you know.
Well, I mean, look, the interesting thing is, you know, NBC, you know, had an estimate up earlier in the day. This may have changed since then, that the Republicans may have only been estimated to flip the House by 1 seat, literally 218 to 217. And what that would mean is that, in the ultimate irony, Sean Patrick Maloney, the DCCC chair, whose job it is to win as many House seats for his party, he will have single-handedly cost his party the House majority. Because what Maloney did was vacate his home district, the 18th, which is where I live, actually, to run in the 17th. That created a vacuum in the 18th. So Pat Ryan had to run in the 18th against Colin Schmidt. Pat Ryan is running in the 18th, but he won a special election in the 19th in, I believe it was August. And so he's serving in the 19th, running in the 18th. And what that means is that they had to find a new Democrat, Josh Riley, to run in the 19th. So basically, it's very, very complicated. But because Maloney moved, right, instead of Democrats
he would
running,
have a marginally better chance.
Right, because he thought he'd have a marginally better chance in the 17th. Because he moved, the Democrats had to run 3 new candidates in the 17th, 18th, and 19th. If he hadn't moved, they would have been able to run 3 incumbent candidates in the 17th, 18th, 19th, because Maloney would have stayed where he is in the 18th. Mondaire Jones would have stayed where he was in the 17th. And Pat Ryan, who won a special election over the summer to represent the 19th, would have been able to run for the 19th as an incumbent. And one thing that we did notice last night is that Democratic incumbents were surprisingly tough to bump off. You know, I mean, they showed a little bit more resiliency than was expected. And we could talk about why in a few minutes, but you know, let you guys do your thing.
And Newsweek does an entire article about that without mentioning what Keaton just laid out, without mentioning one fucking word about that.
The one race that surprised me was this one.
This didn't.
No, it surprised me. I thought that guy was going to lose so hard. Fetterman. You know, like the Fetterman.
Yeah, look, I mean, I was surprised too. I thought the second he opened his mouth on that debate stage.
Fracking
it was
with
over.
yeah.
I just couldn't
But
imagine.
But you know what it
him
is?
winning that race after that point.
You know
Yeah.
what it was, and this is what the Democrats just went in on, like, for the last 2 weeks. Pity. They went in on the pity vote, and I'm gonna say it. You know, like, because I'm hearing a lot about, like, oh, like, John Fetterman is a hero, like, he suffered a stroke and now I'm like, and I'm not making fun of anyone who had, like, my mom had a stroke 15 years ago. So, like, I definitely feel for John Fetterman, you know, in terms of, like, what he's gone through, like, over the last few months. But I tell people, like, stroke aside, he is a shit candidate. And, like, and stroke be damned, like, you can, like, be dead for all I care. But, like, I care more about your policy. I care more about, like, what you stand for. And I see a lot of stands, you know, just being like, especially for months, being like, oh, like, he's based, you know, he wears a hoodie, he's really, like, they tried to play him up as more like, I guess, the casual, like, appearance, like, just kind of more in that relatable kind of way. And there was shit coming out about him, like, I know Sabby Sabs talked about, like, how what he did with that black jogger, that was reported on, but that kind of went under the radar. You know, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but no one, you know, mentioned anything about that. But the fact that he's pro fracking, he's pro cop, I would argue probably maybe anti-black somewhat, you know, but no one gave a damn about that.
I heard some of his best friends are, you know. So.
All right. So, you know, it just, I think, you know, like, they went in on the pity vote, and to the Democrats' credit, they succeeded with him. But again, the idea that, like, it was even close at all with, like, Oz, like, is, I think that's more than
pro-Israel
right
as well. Yeah.
Right. You know, but, you know, so a lot of it was in play here. But, you know, honestly, I thought, like, I knew it could go either way, but I was expecting Oz to squeak this out, you know, but, you know, Democrats went all in on, like, the
That's still
ableism bit, and they
47%, 47% to like 50%. That's a real slim margin for something,
right?
For Dr. Oz.
Right.
Dr. Oz is a disgusting little creep.
Yes.
And that's why he lost. Like, if anything, it demonstrates what
he wanted to vote against him.
Candidate Oz was.
More than
he
Fetterman.
lost against a man who literally has cognitive difficulties that are going to interfere with his ability to do the job for which.
Right.
Oz told him to eat grapefruit, and he didn't listen. Like, he didn't listen.
Like, he should have taken those supplements.
Should have been watching daytime television, you know?
Yeah. No telling, like, speaking for my mom, because actually she had 2 strokes within a span of a few months. The first one was kind of mild. She kind of recovered within like a day or 2. And then the second one, a few months later, like, it took her like several months. And really, for all intents and purposes, she still hasn't completely recovered from that. So that, you know, kind of coupled with, like, his ideology or lack thereof kind of worries me. And but as you guys said, you know, I felt like this was like Trump Biden in the sense that people were voting against Oz, voting, you know, people voting for Fetterman, you know, and, you know, and just, again, the idea, just a pity vote, that people would just kind of like, oh, look at this, like a baby, like, oh, look at this poor thing, you know, like, we have to help him type of bullshit. It's just kind of like, I don't care, you know, like, he's going to run your country, and, like, cognitively, if he's not quite there, like, that is a concern, because that's ultimately going to affect how he will govern. And given what he was saying, like, at the debate, I didn't really watch it, but I saw clips of it, and I was just kind of like, you know, you're going to carry that with you into, like, January, and with the stress of being in the Senate, and you're still recovering, like, shame on the Democratic Party for even pushing him to, like, even continuing to go forward with that.
Kelly M in the chat, we're right back to a runoff in Georgia. You know, which what was that? We got Herschel Walker at 48.5%, 49.4%, close enough to like have the runoff, right?
Yeah, as of 6 when I pulled this, 6 o'clock tonight.
2.1% from the Libertarian Party. Interesting. If only they could do that nationally.
Yeah, well, that's officially going to a runoff, isn't it?
No, it is now.
For Georgia.
You know, it is now. But the idea, like Warnock, a pastor at MLK's church, could not even like coming to the point where he's basically tied with like a racist former Heisman Award winner. Like, you know, like.
Well, it surprises me that Supreme Court backlash didn't help Walker. I mean, clearly he's very pro-abortion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, he's running around getting abortions everywhere he can. He's got a special 2-for-1 deal at Planned Parenthood at this point.
Right. I mean, look, the thing is here, this was just a very bizarre midterms in a number of ways. You had races very, very close that Democrats were able to sort of piece together because of largely a sort of hidden women's vote coming out, you know, to protect reproductive rights in their state. If you look throughout the country, this was certainly true in Georgia. It was even true in Pennsylvania. It was even true in Ohio. I mean, they didn't manage to win Ohio, but Democrats did suffer in big cities because of inflation and crime. It kept their margins down in big cities like Milwaukee, Cleveland's, Atlanta to a slightly lesser extent, Philadelphia to a slightly lesser extent, but still, you could definitely see their margins in the big cities were not what they should have been. However, they made up for that by eating into the Republicans' margins in these smaller, more rural areas. And so, like, where crime hurt them in the cities, abortion helped them out in these rural areas enough to make up for those lost margins in the urban areas in most cases. It didn't work everywhere, but it kept them in the game in enough places, and these races were close enough, and the Republican candidates were just bizarre enough that they were just weak enough to the point where Democrats were able to keep in the game in enough places throughout the country to have a shot at retaining the Senate. Now, the interesting thing is the narrative today is that there was no red wave, and it's absolutely true. There was no red wave. However, after all of this, it's still very possible that the GOP takes both chambers because they're on track to take the House. And it looks like Nevada is going to go to black salt. So that will be a Republican pickup, which cancels out the Fetterman pickup. And at that point, it all comes down to Georgia. At that point, it's 50-49 in the Republicans' favor. And the Georgia runoff is December 6th. And if the Democrats win that, it's 50-50 once again. If the Democrats lose that, it becomes 51-49 red team. And then at that point, wave or not, mission accomplished for the GOP. They took both chambers. So it's a very, very bizarre race. It feels like the momentum is on the Democrats' side now. However, the Republicans are still positioned to have a very good chance at taking the Senate. And if you figure that the Libertarians vote there, is usually the Libertarian vote goes more to the Republican than to the Democrat, you have to give Walker a slight edge in that runoff because there's not going to be a Libertarian. It's a two-person race. And so after all of this, it's still looking possible. I would put it at exactly 50-50 at this point that Republicans take both chambers. Really just a wild.
I'm just going to say this very simply. If Warnock, if they didn't fuck over people with the $600 stimulus, you know, I would say Warnock had a better chance. People haven't forgotten that. So, you know, so I feel like a lot of that kind of speaking into economics is also kind of playing a role in this too. You know, abortion aside, you know, I think it's the idea of like, I know people have not forgotten about how Democratic Party stiff people, from their money. And, like with any one of us, like if you stiff us on our money, we're coming for you. And right now, I feel like in a lot of ways, Warnock is paying for that in terms of like how, the Democratic Party basically stiffed us, but I think especially Georgia. So,
they also stiffed them by not passing voting rights. I mean, that was also a major promise that they made. Going into those runoffs, Ossoff and Warnock. Right.
Brian Kemp takes it at 53%, right? Over Stacey Abrams. I mean, maybe she should have got us at $2,000. Maybe she should have done that. That probably would have.
I think Abrams is a nobody.
She never had
the creation of the media.
Anything.
The liberal media likes to prop up certain people. Beto is one.
Then don't tell me you're going to do something.
Abrams is a loser too. They're just losers who get propped up for no other reason than the fact that guilty white liberals feel good about themselves when they praise Stacey Abrams. That's it. That is the entire appeal of Stacey Abrams.
And they didn't vote for her. Anyway.
She is a guilt management mechanism for white affluent libs. But she was never going to win that race.
They should really go out and host skate tournaments.
Yeah,
Beto.
Beto, Stacey Abrams hosting like skate championships, that kind of thing. Beto skates around. That would be a good kind of MTV.
I'd watch little X Games Democrat edition. I'm okay with that.
Little X Games.
Push Nancy on the mega ramp. Like I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Beto to me is the greatest example of a manufactured media event. Like now it's trivial because it didn't really go anywhere. But wow, man, like. Really, you could write a book just about the Beto phenomenon,
right? And
how fake that was. Do you remember how he was, which was just really insulting in and of itself. He was the white Obama. Remember,
right.
You had former Obama people saying he's going to be the white Obama, and I had never outside of Texas, most people had never seen Beto, right? So you're seeing all of these headlines, and I'm seeing all these shit libs, right? All of a sudden, all these people, and this is a lot of the appeal of the political press. They are selling the idea that by imbibing their fetishes and their attitudes and their obsessions, you become one of them. You're elite, right? So when they really get together and start drumming up a narrative like that, every shit lib will jump on it, and you'll see all of their tweets and their Facebook posts. All of a sudden, they're all pundits. They're all Washington insiders. Oh, this Beto guy, yep, he's gonna be something. They're fucking Jonathan Chait over there all of a sudden. And
he got him a cup of coffee, so they like him. It's like
I had never seen him. And then I saw a video.
What did he do with transportation again?
What,
like,
Beto?
Yeah. Like how? What is
no, you're thinking of Mayor Pete.
Oh,
you're thinking of Mayor Pete. You're thinking of Mayor Pete.
Both of them same fakeness.
Same
but
thing.
Yes.
Yeah, no, same thing. Same thing. Pete had a little more talent than Beto, so
Pete, well, he checked a box.
Yes.
Beto doesn't check any boxes.
Pete also has more talent than Beto.
Yeah, he does a good show too.
Yeah. I'll give you that. The first time I saw Beto O'Rourke, after I had only seen all the headlines, and I had seen every shit lib I know parroting those headlines. I watched a video. I said, "This guy's a fucking moron."
Extra bullet.
What are they talking about? This guy's jumping on tables. He's jumping on this. He's jumping on that. This guy thinks he's like the skateboarding fucking John Kennedy over here, and he sounds like a fucking total loser.
Stacy doesn't have to worry because in 1,000 years she'll be president of Starfleet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
I got that too, and I don't watch Star Trek that much often. So
I guess I'll take this one since it's my shitty state.
Oh, are you in Florida?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got DeSantis here at 59.4%. That's a big margin in
Blowout,
politics.
baby. Blowout.
Yeah, like that's a lot of damage. Like, dude, why again? Tallahassee, of course, went blue. Look how gerrymandered this is, by the way. I just want people to notice. Like look at Miami. Look at Miami.
Orlando.
Cut into 4. Like this is like, the same Debbie Wasserman Schultz district.
I mean, I'm sorry. This does look like a penis with an STD.
Yes.
Like here are the little bumps, the little outbreaks.
I live right in front of the balls. Like.
Oh yeah, that's you right there.
Yeah, right.
Now that I look at it,
right there,
I'm starting to feel bad for Tiffany Cross. Maybe she shouldn't have been fired.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that extra blue part? Where is that at?
Where?
North of Orlando. That blue area there.
God. Now I have to think. Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Gaines, maybe. This is.
Look, I think that's one of those rural areas that went blue. You saw pockets of that in Georgia. You saw pockets of that in Ohio. But this is the kind of map that Republicans were looking for in every crucial state. DeSantis was able to do what Republicans hoped to replicate throughout the country. If you look there, Miami-Dade County is red. He won that 55-45, more or less. Broward County, which is just north of Miami-Dade, that blue strip right there, that went for Chris, but only about by 57-42, which that should be about 66-33. Just north of that is Palm Beach, where West Palm Beach is. That's supposed to be blue. That went red. Tampa went red.
Business.
That's supposed to be blue. Orlando went blue, but only by a handful of points. I think it was less than 5 points.
Yeah,
Gainesville,
I
by the way.
that like some of these.
It is Gainesville. Okay,
should have gone blue.
Gainesville, Lake City.
No, but DeSantis is a gamer. DeSantis performed.
Yeah,
and this is why Russell and I were saying in our live stream this morning that his stock really went up yesterday and Trump's stock really went down because DeSantis executed the plan that Republicans hoped to execute nationwide but couldn't do. Right. Herschel Walker couldn't execute that strategy there. Neither could Dr. Oz. Neither could J.D. Vance, really. He won anyway because Ohio is such a red state now. But you saw pockets of blue in rural Ohio where there shouldn't have been any. You know what I mean? And so, DeSantis was really the only one who executed last night. And that's why, somebody put on our chat last night, or maybe it was this morning, that Fox News is sort of running with the narrative that he's now the new leader of the Republican Party, not Trump, which is interesting because Trump is going to announce his candidacy for the presidency in less than a week.
That's also what they say. Like, he executed in a state, but like, watch what happens on a debate stage when Trump's like, I've always said your wife's ugly. It's gonna be terrible.
He'll take Trump apart. He'll take
just
Trump
like Rubio. You got a dog wife.
He's Trump's worst nightmare, man. He's actually oh yeah,
dude.
He's
no. They said that. They said that. They said that about Rubio too. They said that about. They said that about all the other Republicans that ran against him.
If you think Rubio is DeSantis.
They had
you're
this
not
guy.
Paying attention.
They had this guy.
Rubio is a fucking child.
They had
DeSantis is a smart, shrewd, Machiavellian guy who knows how to play the culture wars, pick the right side in the COVID arguments, and is going to ride that to the presidency. He is going to bury Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a fucking clown who knows how to do one thing. And DeSantis is the kind of guy who's going to be able to figure out how to hit him exactly the right way on the stage. It's like boxing. He's going to study the films. He's going to look for the weak spot, and he's going to go for it. Trump is not just going to be able to go. Also, remember, when Trump first pulled that act, it was a novelty. Nobody had ever done that before. Nobody had gone on a stage and start giving people these insulting names. And, there was such an anti-establishment fervor. And because the Democratic Party, in their wisdom and corruption, didn't allow that to be expressed to the left, the only avenue for expressing it ended up being to the right. Donald Trump was the only way you could vote against the establishment, because they wouldn't let you vote for Bernie, right? And they sure as fuck weren't going to vote for Hillary.
But they had the A team of Republicans at the time try to run against them.
That's like saying they had the best Keystone cops they could find.
I feel you, but
DeSantis is not those people.
I mean,
Jeb Bush
he
is
talked
the
about
punchline at the end of all of our videos.
Look,
who are we talking about? Marco Rubio? Come on.
He's trying to run with Trump's gimmick and not.
No, he isn't. No, he isn't. He is not running with Trump.
He did the whole anti-woke speech today. Like the woke people have always said.
That's not Trump. Trump's not smart enough to give that speech.
Well,
Trump is a guy who knows how to go up on stage and work a crowd. He's Rodney Dangerfield. Oh yeah, I'll tell you. The thing about being president, you have to salute and your arms get tired. That's fucking Trump. That's not DeSantis.
I just think he'd crush in a debate with that guy. Like he puts you on the back foot.
Look, Trump's base is going to get a kick out of Trump being Trump.
Yeah.
And, I think, Trump could probably
he'll call
handle
out
a debate
DeSantis' like terribleness. Like at the same time.
We have results here.
Yeah.
And, this election really is a reset for both parties, because you can't say that the Democrats had a great election either. Bottom line, they lost the House. They're at risk of losing the Senate. That's a failed mission on their part, any way you slice it. They didn't get their ass kicked by, the margins that they were thinking they might have. But at the end of the day, it's very possible that they're going to lose both chambers. So that's not good for them. They have an economy that, people are very, very frustrated by. You have a very, very unpopular president who may or may not run again in 2024. So the Democrats have a lot of questions to answer. But there's no doubt about it that last night gave the Republican Party a lot of big questions to answer themselves, because you have DeSantis, who I would agree with you, Reef, was an underdog until last night. You had him win in the way that Republicans thought they were going to win nationwide, but he was the only one who did it. The Trump candidates were not able to do this. They were not able to pull it off. And Republican voters like to win. They like winning. They don't like losing. They don't like the losers. Okay? They like to win. And if DeSantis can win, if he can side pocket Charlie Crist by 20 points, then that is attractive to them, especially when the Trump candidates throughout the country had real trouble. Even J.D. Vance, who is the best example of a Trump candidate succeeding. J.D. Vance won that race by about 5.5 to 6 points. Mike DeWine, the incumbent Republican governor, won that race by 15 to 20. They called that race for DeWine as soon as the polls closed. It wasn't even close. So even Vance, who was the most successful of all the Trump candidates last night, even he polled about 10 to 12 points behind the non-MAGA Republican running in the same state for governor. Trump, there's no other way to look at it. Last night was a disaster for Donald Trump. And when his stock goes down, DeSantis' stock goes up, period.
Yep. Taibbi put it very well with Trump. He said he had figured out the vulnerability in the American Death Star, and it was the media. That the media could not help but cover a figure like him. The more outrageous he would be, the more obsessed with him they were going to get. Russiagate was necessary for the media and for the Democratic Party to paper over their responsibility for Donald Trump. The media gave this man, what is it, $1 billion in free advertising? Oh, yeah. It's $100,000 that a fucking bot farm spent on Facebook in a multi-billion-dollar election that swung it, not the media covering his empty podium.
Mhm.
That was the genius of Donald Trump. And the people that he was up against, they were losers. They were losers. It was easy. Who was he running against? Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump did not win that election. Hillary Clinton lost it because she was fucking horrible. They found the one person in the country who could be defeated by that fucking clown. And it created
go
this
to
myth.
the polls.
Yeah. we got, how have we never clipped that one? That we should really get a clip of. It will never ever happen.
Come to pass. That's what it was.
Come to pass.
Never come to pass. Like, anyway,
Yeah,
we got
that was like the moonshot speech there.
we got Marco Rubio with 57%. Like, you know, that one's a lot tighter than I thought it was gonna be, actually. So I don't think I saw a single ad from Dimmings though.
No.
Like, so, you know, but look at that 0.2 on Tuan Nguyen.
When?
Yeah.
Now look, I mean, what I would say, I mean, the one caveat here, and Reef, you would know this better than we would because you live there. Florida is fast becoming like the weirdest state in the country.
Yeah,
like Florida.
We've had that trophy for a while.
But really now, it's the most bizarre state in the country. Like it is.
Yeah.
Like I think Trump would have probably put up similar numbers.
Yes.
In that state. You know.
Yeah.
Trump,
there's a reason why he got
tweeted out on
here.
his Truth Social that he got 1 million more votes in the 2020 general than DeSantis got last night. You know, trying to spin it. So you look. Some of this could be a Florida thing. Put DeSantis in Ohio, put DeSantis in Pennsylvania. Does he do as well as he's going to do down there? Probably not. But you know what? That's what the presidential campaign is going to be for. That's what the primary is going to be for. He's going to have to make a case in the 49 other states and see if that message can play. But this gives him the opening to do that. Again, I'm not going to guarantee he's going to do it. Russell's more confident in his assessment that he will than I am. But this gives him the opening to do that because if the Trump slate ran the table last night, Trump would be virtually unbeatable, right? But they did the opposite. They shit the bed almost everywhere. And so that makes this a fight. That makes this upcoming primary a real battle because Republicans don't want to lose. I mean, they spent the last 2 years, really, as soon as Biden got elected, they were talking about what a bloodbath that these midterms were going to be. And we all thought they were right. We all thought they were right. But through a combination of circumstances, obviously, Dobbs did not help them at all. It hurt them very, very badly. But also candidate quality proved to be a problem. There's no way to interpret it any other way. The fact that Kemp side-pocketed Abrams by 8 points, and now you have Walker struggling into a runoff, right there, that tells you there was split ticketing going on. There were people who went in and they voted for Kemp for governor, but they didn't know if they trusted this fucking, punch-drunk, lobotomized football star to be their senator. And that's just a candidate quality issue. There's no two ways about it.
And we've got JD Vance here in Ohio with 53%, right?
Just talking about what you were saying before, Keaton's same shit.
Yeah.
Like
same shit, split ticket, pretty much. Like,
Yeah, now these maps, this is the Google one, so they don't give you the shades of red and blue. The way that some of the more detailed maps do. But a lot of those red counties there between Cleveland and Columbus, those are more pink than red. So Vance won those counties, but not by much. He won them, 60-40, whereas those rural counties usually go 75-25, right?
Yeah.
And you see even a couple of those tiny ones even went blue. Right. And so, I mean, that tells you something. What was the final count there? I can't see it. It's too small on my screen, but what was his final margin? 53-47.
Yep.
Mike DeWine won that by, I think, 15.
Yep. split ticket. I mean, most of these were like, I mean, that Mike Devine you're just talking about, right? 62.
62.
Right.
Look at that, 62. So wow, he
this
did
is
better than I thought. So okay, so there you have it. Mike DeWine wins by 24 points. This is the same pool of voters. They vote for DeWine by 24. They vote for Vance by 6. That's an 18-point difference. That's 1 in 5 voters.
Yeah.
Split the ticket. DeWine, Ryan.
All right. So
that is an indictment of J.D.
is,
Vance, and by extension, an indictment of Donald Trump's judgment.
Well, this is where I think we have got to shift our paradigm. And, you know, we in the alternative media pride ourselves on being resistant to mainstream narratives. But look, man, we probably all somewhat absorbed the narrative that the Republican base wants these maniacs, that they want the Palins, that's their thing, that's their drug of choice. The electoral evidence is really not bearing that out, man. The Youngkin guys are doing a lot better.
No, the normies are doing much better.
The normies are doing much better because look, you've got a new generation of normies. They're not like the Mitt Romneys. Yeah, the Mitt Romneys did not appeal to the Republican base, but you give them people who are basically give them enough of where they are on culture, and definitely Donald Trump has created a shift in where that is, but not as much of a shift as the media would make it out that, yeah, no, they want these rootin' tootin' crazy anti-abortion nut jobs. If that were the case, last night would have gone very
well, who votes in a midterm?
Right. And
the party base.
I know.
Party base votes in a midterm.
No, not Trump's base, though.
No?
Like, not Trump's base. Trump base comes out for a main election because they get free beer. But
the Trump base is the base.
Well, the Trump base now.
Party at this point.
The people
all
the elderly,
anti-Trump people became Democrats.
The elderly, the over 60 who like their nice, polite Republicans. Who
look, that's
never
an interesting
Trumpers.
point. Look, I understand what you're saying. What you're saying is that Trump himself wasn't on the ballot, and so the real diehards may not have come out because Trump wasn't on it.
It's not
right?
it's not as sexy, to quote Anna. It's a midterm.
But I think there's enough overlap between the base of the party and the Trump base now, just because he's the de facto. I mean, he's not the de facto. He is the leader of the party until someone unseats him.
But it's not like he bombed.
He also made his wishes clear.
Yeah,
on who he wanted, what he wanted.
Yeah, he was out there rallying, right? I mean, he went out and rallied. He put himself on the ballot. He injected himself into this midterms, as much as he could, thinking that last night would have gone really, really well for his candidates, and that would have been it. That would have been it. There'd have been no Republican primary, really, if the Republicans ran the table last night.
Yeah.
But that's not how it happened.
Yeah. And as you said, it didn't, like, if anything, like some of his, like him inserting himself in that kind of backfired.
It was a gamble. It was a big gamble that he took. He'd have been smarter just laying back. He'd have been smarter not endorsing candidates, just let the process play out, let guys like Youngkin, that was the model. Glenn Youngkin, Virginia governor, plain, red button vest, whatever, unthreatening Youngkin. If Trump just hung back, let this play out, the Republicans would have done very well. He's still the leader of the party, right? No one would have been able to sneak in and upstage him. Then he could have announced next week, and he'd have been the overwhelming favorite. But instead, he put himself out there, and things blew up in his face. And now he's got a real dogfight with a governor of a huge electoral prize. I mean, Florida, according to the new census now, I think has over 30 electoral votes. So now between Florida, Texas, and Ohio, that's it. The GOP's got almost 90 votes right there out of 270 they would need. And 31 of those are from Florida. And you got the governor of that state whose star is rising now with a real case to make that he should lead the party and not Donald Trump. And so, backfired majorly.
He's a fusion of a Youngkin and a Trump candidate. He's a perfect unity candidate to bring together that entire base.
Unity. Yeah, he's edgy enough to not be Youngkin, but he's normal enough to not be Trump.
Yep, exactly.
Keaton, you mentioned something that I
what a
mentioned
low
on-
bar we have, you know.
Well, this is politics.
Well,
Right.
look
business for ugly
at the fucking mummy that he'd be running against in a general election.
Yeah.
But you know what though, like Keaton, you mentioned something that I've said, you know, like because I've kind of gone back and forth of whether Trump would run again because he doesn't have to. Like in a sense, like he's essentially like kingmaker now. So all he essentially would have to do now, like prior to this, was just kind of give like a quiet blessing, so to speak, to any like people that he kind of liked, you know, because I always just kind of believed, like, especially when Trump was in office, Trump liked the power, but he didn't like the responsibility. Like he just wants the fame of it. He doesn't want to do any work associated.
It's his ego.
Yeah, it's his ego. So it does kind of make sense, you know, given like what Trump has been doing. Really, I could argue really for the last few months, but I think especially kind of really kind of kicked off with like, especially within last month, you know, doing like going to rallies and all the kind of stuff to kind of get his name out there again, thinking like, oh, you know, people are just gonna, you know, people love me, so I'll just say whatever I need, and like everyone will just kind of fall in line, and you know, and I think last night it kind of showed no, he doesn't necessarily have that kind of pull or that power that he probably would have had, you know, if he kind of laid low, as you said. So I also think, you know, just thinking about it, yeah, I'm kind of doubtful now. Like I was very sure, like, especially maybe up until maybe like last week, he's like, because I hear the rumors, like, yeah, he's probably going to announce, like, he's going to run for president. Like, I was like, yeah, I can probably see it.
I also said that they could just say that. They were like, yeah, no, Trump's you got to vote because Trump's going to run, and like,
yeah, and that's the other thing too. They probably could say that just to get people like on the Democrat side, just to scare them to be like, oh, we have to vote. You know.
Well, Trump he said at the rally with JD Vance on November 7th, Monday. He said he's going to be making a very big announcement from Mar-a-Lago on November 15th. So he basically said, I'm getting in the race in a week. Now, could he come up with some other big announcement if he gets cold feet? Sure. You know, he's shrewd enough to do that.
He's got a state
but I don't think
to
so,
rebuild.
man. I think he's going to go for it. There's no reason to believe he won't. It just got a lot harder for him. No doubt about that.
I've looked into the laws, and apparently there are no laws barring me from dating Ivanka.
Yeah, right,
So
exactly. That's his big announcement.
I'm in a throuple with my daughter and my wife.
A throuple,
big announcement.
Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the buffet.
So to wrap
I'm getting tired of winning.
Some of these slides to catch up a little bit. Governor of Michigan, Gretchen
Am I running
Whitmer.
for president? No, I was never intending to do that. No, that's fake news. Fake news. I'm not running.
Fake news.
I had enough of that.
He would say that though.
Yeah.
Texas, we had Abbott, right?
Who cares?
54. Next, Arizona, Katie Hobbs. Not much there either. Arizona.
What's going on with that count, man? Has that started moving again, or are they still stuck at like 61%?
Slowly 6 this evening. So
what the fuck is going on over there?
I have no idea. No idea. It's unbelievable. Last night, you know, we were on like we said all night. Nevada polls closed at 10 Eastern. We didn't get any results from Nevada until after 2 a.m. 4 hours went by, nothing, zero.
Yeah.
Then some early vote, I guess, came in, or some mail-in, whatever.
New Jersey's everything was broken. Everything was broken in New Jersey. Like, you know. So, but anyway, we tend to like this guy in the show. Colin definitely likes this guy. He has some words on voting that I thought people should hear. You ready? I don't care if you're ready. We're doing it anyway. You know? How about
Democratic.
Muted?
No, I'm not a Democrat. If you look at the Africans in the Democratic Party, now I'm not a Democrat. I've never voted in my life in the Democratic Party, and I never voted in the Democratic Party. It's racist and it's capitalist to the core. This is understood. And I shed my blood. I shed my blood for the vote now. I want to make that clear. Some people get confused. The vote for me has never been the road to liberation. It's only the means of organizing my people. You vote for once in 4 years, and that's your political responsibility? That's the height of bourgeois propaganda, making the people politically irresponsible, thinking their responsibility is limited to a one-day vote. But politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on, not voting on one day. So the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No.
I saw him speak in college, and
you saw Kwame Ture in person.
Yes.
Oh wow, how was that?
It was pretty fascinating, because he was an incredible speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And he was preaching bloody revolution.
Yes.
And he kept using the refrain. It was like watching a great preacher. He had that kind of rhythm.
You had that cadence.
And he had that cadence, and he had that thematic continuity through his entire speaking.
No.
So he kept coming back to the theme. He kept tying it to Christianity, that there is no salvation without the shedding of blood. That's what he kept coming back to.
Right.
To say we have to shed blood to be saved. We have to have and then, you had Zionist students show up and start protesting him. And
they would agree.
It was a scene. It was very interesting.
But you know what? Now that you said
the room was very electric.
Yeah.
Like I have never been in the presence of that kind of a speaker, and I've never been in a room with that kind of intensity and urgency.
Indy was like, those were fighting words where he said he was the Black Obama. But
I was joking. I
know.
But
good joke.
We have a certain gallows.
Now that
you told me you told me nothing was off. I asked you before we went on. I said, "Is there anything off limits?" You said no. So there you go.
I think you hit my limit.
I mean, you invited us on. I'm assuming you've watched our show.
But you know what though? Like after you gave me, I got a second, thought about it a little bit. I think you're right. If Obama had that revolutionary, which he didn't.
Well, that's what I meant by it.
If he did, then yes, I could definitely see that. But obviously, like Obama is like very much a capitalist imperialist fuck through and through. So like he can never do, what Kwame Ture did. But I think it's just. But I think, like we said, this is kind of my mantra. And now I know our audience is kind of sick of me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway because we need to know this. But I think, like obviously all of this shows, like Reef and I basically, and again, we're glad you guys came on to kind of give this more in depth than we ever could. But basically, our take on this is like, okay, like it's not going to affect our lives any. Like in terms of like, it will, but not in a way that is going to be helpful to most of us. So
look, everything he said in that clip that you played was absolutely right.
Yeah, it's
just right.
Yeah, it's just the idea of like, I went to vote yesterday, based in DC. I went, I think at like 2:00 in the afternoon. I had the day off. I was the only one there at the time. So like, and I was there for 5 minutes. Like. So I think it's just really, conversely, there are people waiting in line for hours. So like the fuck, with that too. But I think it's just the idea of like, and I feel like that's why people get so disenchanted with the voting process, especially given like they vote, but they don't see any change. But then like especially on the left, we push people to vote, but we don't necessarily talk about organizing, direct action, mutual aid, all these things that are, I would argue now, are probably more important to do than ever. But because organizing involves people and time and strategy, people don't want to do that because that takes up like
work.
That's your sacrifice. That's your shedding of blood right there.
Yeah.
And no one's willing to do that. Like I shouldn't say many, like the few and far in between, I should say. So that takes work. And
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, look, we got into this last night on our stream, and I've said this over and over again. The electorate is becoming bougier and bougier.
Yeah.
I mean, what Torre said there about, this idea that, every 4 years we go and we vote. What kind of bourgeois bullshit is that? And he's absolutely right. But that's the electorate now. The electorate now is more comfortable, right? They are more secure in their positions. Pardon me. And so they are normier. They're more centrist. Like the centrists are winning in that sense. They're not winning because they're correct. They're winning because they have been successful in sort of manipulating the boundaries of the game. And, the so-called fringe left, like the Bernie movement, they've kind of been taken off the board. UK, same thing. They took the Corbyn movement off the board, right? And so who's left to vote? The people who are left to vote are the people for whom defund the police is terrifying, right? And so that's the overall dynamic here, and that's why politics is so constricted now.
You're missing the new right. They're voting. Those guys are voting. I was talking about
Al Franken's surely worried about the new right. Did you guys see this little clip? We're not gonna be able to pass anything. There's gonna be hearings. They're gonna investigate. They're gonna try to impeach stuff. Just figured we'd play that a little bit. I know we had some bad jokes earlier, but Al Franken's here, so
Stuart Smalley.
No sound.
I mean, he was funny in his day.
Oh, here you go.
What I worry about, of course,
if
the Republicans take over, of course, but I don't think I'd be for marijuana, because when they prosecute people for marijuana, it's racially biased. We know that. That's a very good reason to legalize it. What I worry about, of course, if the Republicans take over, whether it's by a small margin or a large margin, that they are, first of all, we're not going to be able to pass anything. Secondly, there'll be hearings. There'll be investigations. They'll investigate Hunter Biden. It'll be very toxic. Marjorie Taylor Greene and those people will want to impeach Biden. I worry about it just being very, very ugly. And I'm pretty sure that's pretty predictable.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but what world are we living in where it is not totally appropriate to investigate Hunter Biden, given his ties to Ukraine, a country that his father, the president, is now funneling tens of billions of dollars worth of weapons to, in possibly accelerating a nuclear war? How is that ugly? Like, how is that?
What if he had the same fact
to investigate Hunter Biden?
Don Jr.
And no one is, and funny enough, no one talks about that. No one has ever made that connection of just being like Hunter Biden, Ukraine, we're possibly going into World War III in a proxy war of Ukraine. Like, no one, not to say no one's talking about it, but no one is saying that out loud. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, they act like it's this bizarre, vindictive thing. Oh, they're going to go after Hunter Biden. No, he had a seat on an energy board in Ukraine. He only got that seat because his father was the vice president. Now his father's the president, who is fueling a war in Ukraine against a nuclear power. How is it not completely appropriate to investigate him?
And look what the Democrats did as soon as they took over, January 6th, and impeaching Trump.
Well, it's like friend of the show, Shadow Ban, aka Spit and Venom. So exactly like the last 6 years then. Yeah, they're worried that Biden's corruption will be investigated. Like, gotta love it. Einen member Chris Legion.
Well, they are. I mean, look, one of the things I think, they probably would have done this anyway. I mean, the Republicans go for your throat whenever they have power, right?
Yeah.
But especially given the narrow margin with which they won this race, I think they're going to feel a need to be hyper aggressive because they feel like they haven't torn down the Democrats enough to feel good about 2024 because they just barely won this midterm. So now they're going to feel a need like, okay, we really got to go for these fuckers' throats now.
So
and they're going to come at him very hard with a House majority. I'd be very surprised if they didn't impeach him over the spring.
Well, I mean, Al Franken's not the smartest.
I think
choice
so.
maker.
They're going to be hyper aggressive.
Yeah,
and why
I think so,
shouldn't they
too.
be? Why shouldn't they be? I'm sorry.
They have
This is
to
a
be.
massive conflict of interest. The fact that Hunter Biden was on an energy board in Ukraine, of all countries,
Right.
given what's going on now, come on,
Plus,
give me a
giving
fucking
them the
break.
chance to like control all houses, like seats in government. Fuck yeah, they're gonna go hard.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah. But yeah, Al Franken, what are you doing, bro? I mean, you've made bad decisions in the past, but like, you know, like it doesn't mean you need to make them now, you know? But anyway, I think we've done most of the election coverage, Collin.
yeah, but I know. So anyway, thank you guys. That was again a lot more in depth than we probably would have ever done on our own. So definitely appreciate you for that. So
now I just get to take more of your time for more
We
segments.
had 16 hours of rehersal for that segment.
I was
this week on our
gonna
channel.
say,
yeah.
we put in the sweat equity.
Yeah.
So I brought with us this story from the old Chrissy Hedges. I hope people call him Chrissy when they get to know him. You know? What's up, Chrissy? Anyway, he put this story in Consortium.
Like the Sopranos.
Right? Yeah.
Hey, Chrissy.
Hey, old Chrissy, huh?
Chrissy.
But yeah, so he put this in SharePost, Chrissy did. You want to talk about with the U.S. midterms? Go ahead.
Does he change his mind? Say capitalism is really working and America
Yes.
is on a soaring
That's
trajectory
exactly
into the 21st century?
You got it. Yeah,
He's finally turned around.
Yeah, they're talking
Drug
about
addicts
Biden
deserve to rot in jail.
and other establishment politicians that hope to paper over the rotten pain of the system they created with the same decorum they used to sell the country the con of neoliberalism. Sound about like Chrissy, right?
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he's a great writer. I love Chris Hedges, but he really does kind of write the same article over and over again.
A lot.
Like every
Yeah.
article is basically the same.
Everything sucks.
He's got
Exactly. Right.
He's going to drop at least one reference to Sheldon Wolin. He's going to Hannah Arendt will probably come up at some point.
Like the Chris Hedges drinking
something
game?
about a Roman. He will always bring up some Roman, either what they said or the excesses of the Romans. He's kind of got a formula. This is one of those things. When he dies, and may he live forever, but when he dies, you could take these articles, put them into a chat bot, and just keep writing Chris Hedges articles forever.
Yep. So, Chris Hedges starts the bipartisan project of dismantling U.S. democracy, which took place over the last few decades on behalf of corporations and the rich, have left only the outward shell of democracy. The courts, legislative bodies, the executive branch, and the media, including public broadcasting, are captive to corporate power. There is no institution left that can be considered authentically democratic. The corporate coup d'etat is over. They won. Americans lost. The wreckage of this neoliberal project is appalling. Endless and futile wars to enrich a military-industrial complex that bleeds the U.S. treason of half of all discretionary spending, deindustrialization that has turned U.S. cities into decayed ruins, the slashing and privatization of social programs, including education, utility services, and healthcare, which saw over 1 million Americans account for 1/5 of global deaths from COVID. Although the U.S. has 4% of the world's population, draconian forms of social control, embodied in militarized police functioning as lethal armies of occupation in poor urban areas, the largest prison system in the world, a virtual tax boycott by the richest individuals and corporations, money-saturated elections that perpetuate our system of legalized bribery, and the most intrusive state surveillance of the citizenry in U.S. history. So yeah, life sucks, says Chrissy. But he wants to quote Gore Vidal. I don't know if you remember that guy. United States is funded by the brightest people in the country, and we haven't seen them since. United States of Amnesia, that movie I just had the poster of. To quote Gore Vidal, the corporate press and the ruling class create fictional, feel-good personas for candidates, treat all political campaigns if it is a day at the races, and gloss over the fact that on every major issue, from trade deals to war, there's very little difference between Democrats and Republicans. The Democratic Party and Joe Biden are not the lesser evil, but rather, as Glenn Ford pointed out, the more effective evil. So he wants to start with Biden's record. Biden supported the campaign to discredit and humiliate Anita Hill, to appoint Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. He is one of the principal architects of the endless wars in the Middle East, calling for, quote, taking Saddam down. 5 years before the invasion of Iraq, he rehabilitated the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, after vowing to vote the country a pariah because of the assassination of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Biden is a fervent supporter of Israel, calling the apartheid state the single greatest strength America has in the Middle East, Jack, and declaring, I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. His campaigns have been lavishly funded by the Israel lobby for at least 2 decades, if you're keeping track at home. In the 1970s, he fought school busing, arguing that segregation was beneficial for blacks. He and South Carolina's racist Senator Strom Thurmond sponsored the Comprehensive Crime Control Act, which eliminated parole for federal prisoners and limited the amount of time sentences could be reduced for good behavior. Biden sponsored and aggressively pushed the 1994 crime bill, which he also helped draft, calling for its passage because we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. The bill expanded the death penalty for dozens of existing and new federal crimes and mandated life imprisonment for a third violent felony, also known as the 3 strikes and you're out rule, more than doubling the nation's prison population. The bill provided funds to add 100,000 new police officers and build new prisons on the condition that prisoners serve their entire sentences. He pushed through the 1996 Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, which gutted the federal writ of habeas corpus, abolished the rights of death row prisoners, and mandated harsh federal sentencing rules. There he is doing that at the 1994 crime bill. In case you were wondering who he was with, all those badges behind him. Yep. Biden takes credit for writing the 2001 Patriot Act, which expanded the government's ability to monitor anyone's phone and email communications, collect bank and credit reporting records, and track activity on the internet. He backed austerity programs, including the destruction of welfare and cuts to Social Security. He fought for NAFTA and other free trade deals, which fueled inequality, deindustrialization, and a significant drop in wages and the offshoring of millions of manufacturing jobs to underpaid workers who toil in sweatshops in countries like Mexico, Malaysia, China, or Vietnam. There he is with old W. But yeah, that's where W signing the Patriot Act. I don't know if y'all remember that. That was a fun time. I remember Jon Stewart laying into him for that one. He also backed the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act that, as Human Rights Watch writes, eliminated key defense against deportation and subjected many more immigrants, including legal permanent residents, to detention and deportation. Biden long opposed abortion, writing in a letter to a constituent, "Those of us who are opposed to abortion should not be compelled to pay for them. As you may know, I have consistently, on no fewer than 50 occasions, voted against federal funding of abortions." Yeah, thoughts so far on just how shit Biden is? Because he is.
I mean, this is just like a brief overview of I think of shit we know.
Yes.
But I think I just would kind of wish that and it's not going to be, but I feel like something like this should be a little bit more on public record in terms of people to really kind of reflect and kind of see, like, or read, like some of the atrocities that Biden has basically committed, on us. I think just as far as like, and I said this to you earlier, Reef, like I was speaking to a friend, a couple of days ago, because he was in Pennsylvania, he was like voting for Fetterman, and and I didn't want to get into an argument with him because he's a friend, but basically just being like, like he's this, right? And like he was like, oh, I'm voting for him because as a guy, like I want to have abortion rights protected. And I was like, you do know that could have been codified under Obama, right? He's like, no, like they didn't have the votes then. And I'm like, like we don't like. I can't fault him in a lot of ways given where he was, but at the same time, just the ignorance of people in terms of like either they forget or the little that they know in terms of like how the decisions that Biden has made has kind of influenced, like what has come down the pipe now. And people don't know that or just really ignorant to it, that something like this should be more readily available. This is what like mainstream media should be talking about. And they don't,
Sure.
For reasons, but
that's where you can't blame the people, right?
No, and like
because the system is not working the way it's supposed to. We're supposed to have this fourth estate where the media informs them, and they don't inform them.
No,
people got jobs, they got kids. Keaton, he just puts his kids out in the backyard and tells them to go play. And he obsesses on politics all day. But most people.
I drive for a living, so I learn about this shit while I'm working. That's really how I do it.
Right.
I'm driving in my car all day, so I listen to podcasts and all
podcasts.
But I say all that because I say, on stream, because I teach, like I can't physically or mentally. One, Twitter is just accessible, so like for my mental health, like it's not, conducive, especially with me working. But it's like I just call myself like a teacher just happens to care about politics and knowing how it influences my life, that I feel like on a minimal level, I should at least be in tune to what's happening, because all these decisions these fuckers are doing, like down the street from me, affect me, eventually. And I just wish people kind of took that more to heart, and something like this that Chris Hedges would kind of help people, but I think it's the idea of like, this is not being talked about in mainstream media. And if it is, it's usually against, on the other team, to kind of be like, kind of get into more like a sports mentality in terms of like, this is my person, I'm going to be there and I'm going to be against you.
Well, yeah. Well, it's just nonsense. It's the Taibbi and Thomas Franks have probably done the best writing on this, but Taibbi has really made this his mission to talk about how the media has just become siloed, where you have one part of the pie. It's all a la carte information. It is to news reporting what grape drink is to grape juice, right? It's a grape juice like fake artificial simulation, but that's very bad for you. It's not the thing itself. They've gone all in on the commercial imperatives of riling people up and turning them into rage addicts. And it can't be
manufacturing
overstated.
Consent.
Well, they're also manufacturing. Yes, they're manufacturing consent, and they're also manufacturing outrage. They're manufacturing this hatred between people within the country, which is extremely dangerous.
And other countries.
The biggest single factor in why the conversation has gotten so toxic is the media. The media turning towards commercial imperatives, because people are much more likely to come back and watch tomorrow if you give them this world where there are good guys and there are bad guys, and we're going to get those bad guys in the final reel, but you got to turn in tomorrow to see what the latest revelation and plot developments are. This really appeals to how people's minds work. Look at what all of the top performing movies of all time have been. They're all very simple, good versus evil stories that really, people really like that kind of a narrative. That's what they've turned our political discourse
Mm-hmm.
into. So it's no surprise that people now at historic levels say they would not be friends with somebody of a different political party, that they wouldn't date someone of a different political party, that they've been conditioned to think this way.
Well, or Russia. You know, here's Biden barely standing with Ukraine. You know, like old Chrissy Hedges wants to point out that, you know, Biden and the Democrats annually increase the military budget, approving $813 billion per fiscal year in 2023. He and the Democrats have provided over $60 billion in military aid and assistance to the war in Ukraine with no end in sight. They also have no exit strategies. Bad pullout game from the Dems. The decisions of politicians like Biden have a staggering human cost, not only for the poor, workers, and the shrinking middle class, but for millions of people in the Middle East, millions of families ripped apart by mass incarceration, millions more forced into bankruptcy for our mercenary for-profit medical system, where corporations are legally permitted to hold 6 children hostage while their frantic parents bankrupt themselves to save them, millions who became addicted to opioids, and hundreds of thousands who died from them, millions denied welfare assistance, and all of us barreling towards extinction because of refusal to curb the greed and destructive power of the fossil fuel industry, which has raked in $2.8 billion a day in profit over the last 50 years. The decisions of politicians like Biden had a staggering human cost, not only for the poor, workers. What is this doubled? Yes. Biden, morally vacuous and of limited intelligence, is responsible for more suffering and death at home and abroad than Donald Trump, but the victims in the U.S. Punch and Judy media shows are rendered invisible, and that is why the victims despise the whole superstructure and want to tear it down. These establishment politicians and their appointed judges promulgated laws that permitted the top 1% to loot $54 trillion from the bottom 90% from 1975 to 2022 at a rate of $2.5 trillion a year, according to a study by the Rand Corporation. The fertile ground of our political, economic, cultural, and social wreckage spawned an array of neo-fascists, con artists, racists, criminals, charlatans, conspiracy theorists, right-wing militias, and demagogues that will soon take power. Decayed societies such as the Weimar Germany or the former Yugoslavia, which I covered for the New York Times, always vomit up political deformities who express the hatred a betrayed public feel for a corrupt ruling class and bankrupt liberalism. The twilight of the Greek, Roman, Ottoman, Habsburg, and Russian empires were no different. For those playing their Chris Hedges drinking game at home, they gotta hit that shot up. The political deformities play the role of the Snopes clan in William Faulkner's trilogy, The Hamlet, The Town, and The Mansion. The Snopeses wrested control in the South from a degenerate aristocratic elite, Flem Snopes and his extended family, which include a killer, a pedophile, and a bigamist, an arsonist, a mentally disabled man who copulates with a cow, and a relative who sells tickets to witness the bestiality, are fictional representations of the scum that hijacked the Republican Party. William Faulkner right there, in case people didn't know what he looked like. The usual reference to amorality, which accurate, is not sufficiently distinctive, and by itself does not allow us to place them, and as they should be, placed in a historical moment. The critical Irving Howe wrote of the Snopeses, perhaps the most important thing to be said is that they are what comes afterwards, the creatures that emerge from the devastation with the slime still upon their lips. Let a world collapse in the South or Russia, and there appear figures of coarse ambition driving their way up from beneath the social bottom, men to whom moral claims are not so much absurd as incomprehensible, sons of bushwhackers or mushiks drifting in from nowhere and taking over through the sheer outrageousness of their monolithic force. Howe wrote, they became presidents of local banks and chairmen of party regional committees, and later, a trifle slicked up, they muscled their way into Congress or the Politburo, scavengers without inhibition. They need not believe in the crumbling official code of their society. They need only learn to mimic its sounds. And there's no call for real democracy. I don't know if you guys heard of any. I heard democracy was on the ballot, but didn't see anyone trying to fix that. Biden and other establishment politicians are not actually calling for democracy. They are calling for civility. They have no intention of extracting the knife thrust into the backs of people. They hope to paper over the rot and the pain with the decorum of the polite, measured talk they used to sell us the con of neoliberalism. The political correctness.
Hold on one second, Reef. We saw this last week with Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Like, during the thing, he was like, and when those protesters, were yelling at him, he was like, basically, you need to shut up. You need
You're being rude.
You're being rude, but there's a way that you have to.
Would you go to a workplace and behave this way?
Yes.
Yes, I would.
Go to a workplace?
Yes, I would. In a case of an emergency, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well,
my kids know that.
You should have been there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, Obama's not a very union-centric guy. He's not seen anyone yell at the bosses yet. So, speaking of,
well, I mean, look, that just
he
indicates.
Certainly didn't.
I mean, look, that indicates just a completely neoliberal view of politics and of the world more broadly, that he would compare a political event to a workplace environment.
Yes.
Would you behave like this at a workplace? Well, I'm not at a workplace. I'm at a political rally.
Right.
You're not my boss. You know what I mean? Like, this is a political event. You're a politician. In theory, you answer to me. I don't answer to you.
But then, like, in an emergency...
Would you speak to your boss that way, sir?
Right, exactly. Right.
But in an emergency, like, if you need people to get out of a building in case if the building is burning, you got to do whatever you need to do to get people out of there. And I'm going to yell. Look, especially I have young kids. Like, I yell if, like, in the case of that emergency, I'm like, get out. Like, so yeah. But
well, they don't expect to be held accountable, and this is a lot of the hysteria about social media. I mean, I'm not saying there are not legitimate bad actors on social media, but if you look at a lot of what they're complaining about, when you look at a lot of what the journalists are complaining about, what the politicians are complaining about, they're complaining about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
They're complaining about people having an outlet by which they can call them out in a very public way.
Mm-hmm.
And in which the things they say can go viral and everyone can hear them. They don't like the fact that social media has given people a platform to petition the government in a very public way, or particularly to criticize journalists, right?
Yeah.
I'm the one who's supposed to have a platform and dictate the conversation. What do you mean you're going to answer? You're not allowed to answer. That's really the issue with Elon Musk. Does anyone really and look, he's not doing himself any favors with his I'm going to do this one day and this another day, and he really didn't do himself any favors tweeting out that Paul Pelosi article, like 5 minutes into his takeover of Twitter. But all of that aside, does anyone really think Elon Musk is going to have Stormfront on Twitter now? Does anybody really believe that? That's not what it is. They, with the threat of congressional hearings, had cowed all of these tech leaders into all they had to say was, this is disinformation. Okay, we'll take it down. Don't worry. They had gotten control of it.
And where do we find that out at? On a podcast about aliens and monkeys. Like, I've got to go watch Joe Rogan to get like that little bit of information. They've done it to themselves, is essentially, I think Chrissy's main point. But to continue, the political correctness and inclusivity imposed by college-educated elites, unfortunately, has now become associated with the corporate assault, as if female CEO or a black police officer is going to mitigate the exploitation and abuse. Minorities are always welcome, as they were in other species of colonialism, if they serve the dictates of the masters. This is how Barack Obama, whom Cornel West called a black mascot for Wall Street, became U.S. president. Freedom for millions of enraged Americans has become the freedom to hate, the freedom to use a litany of slurs, the freedom to physically assault Muslims, undocumented workers, women, African Americans, homosexuals, and anyone who dares criticize their Christian fascism, the freedom to celebrate historical movements and figures that the college-educated elites condemn, including the KKK and the Confederacy, the freedom to ridicule and dismiss intellectuals, ideas, science, and culture, the freedom to silence those who have been telling them how to behave, the freedom to revel in hyper-masculinity, racism, sexism, violence, and the patriarchy, which I made way too big, but you know.
But you know what? That's probably just as well, considering the
words in there. Yeah.
That may get us flagged. So
what
did I tell you, Sheldon Wolin? I told you.
You're
I told
hitting
you
that
he'd be in there.
Chrissy drinking game. This crypto fascists have always been part of the American landscape, but the disenfranchisement of millions of Americans, especially white Americans, has inflamed these hatreds. Voting for the architects of what political prisoner Sheldon Wolin calls a system of inverted totalitarianism will not make them go away. In fact, it will further discredit liberal ideas and liberal democracy. This puts liberals in a terrible bind. The Democratic Party spent millions funding far-right Pied Piper candidates, assuming they would be easy to defeat, a tactic foolishly copied from the Clinton campaign, which secretly elevated Trump in the hopes that he would win the Republican nomination. The Democrats have worked to censor critics from the left and the right on social media. They claim they are the last bulwark against tyranny. None of these subterfuges will work. America will descend in a Viktor Orban type of authoritarianism without profound political, social, and economic reform. After the Iraq War went sour, Chrissy, as someone who publicly opposed the invasion and had been the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times, was often asked what the U.S. should do now. I answered that Iraq could no longer be put back together. It was broken. The U.S. broke it. Those who ask if we should support the Democrats as a tactic to halt a descent into tyranny are in a similar dilemma. My answer is no different. We should have walked out on the Democratic Party while we still had a chance. I mean, any questions? I feel like Chrissy lays it out as always, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he makes a great point. I mean, you know, like I said earlier, it seems like if you've read one Hedges article, you've kind of read them all.
Yeah.
I mean, well, no.
This one was a lot shorter than most of his.
Hannah Arendt was not mentioned in this one.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, I mean, that distinction between democracy and civility is a very good point. Because the democracy that the liberal class misses so much is one that is really only it only exists in the form of a certain decorum, and he used that exact word. And so, yeah, I mean, look, I think he's right on there.
It's a politics you have to be very comfortable to be able to afford. The whole liberal political project is a politics for comfortable people who really don't have to worry about inflation or how they're going to make their house payments. It's a politics for people who can settle for representation as a substitute for policy because they don't really need policy changes. They can afford to invest in just feeling good about themselves because, wow, look at all this representation. Look at who we put in this cabinet position. That's a politics you have to not know what an empty refrigerator looks like to cultivate. If your refrigerator is empty, that's not your politics.
It's guilt management on these people's parts because the people who can afford to have such a superficial understanding of what politics is, they understand. If you're a liberal, like if you're a right winger, you know, you believe in, you know, survival of the fittest, right? You sort of like believe in just right, in just like this very Darwinian economic model, and it's everybody sink or swim. I swam, so I have what I have, and fuck everybody else, right? They don't feel any guilt about it. Liberals feel a little guilty about it, right? They know that they are the beneficiaries of an unjust system, And insofar as they are that, it means their gains are, at least to a certain extent, ill-gotten, right? And so liberal politics for them is about suppression of that guilt, and nothing assuages them of that guilt more than a guy like Barack Obama ascending to the presidency.
Right.
This guy was born to a single mother, a mixed race child, and he came from nothing, and he went to Harvard and became a constitutional law professor, and then the Senate, and then the presidency, because the ascendance of a guy like Obama proves to these people that the system that they benefit from is not so unjust in their mind. That's how they make that work.
Right.
That's how they make that work. And that's what all this representation is all about. That's what all this diversity, equity, and inclusion bullshit is all about. All these corporations with these diversity programs and stuff like that and hiring. This is all just a way to smooth over the brutalities of the capitalist system that they operate within. It's a way to trick morons into believing that a corporation exists for any other reason but to make a profit. Right? The social responsibility of, Nike, Apple. It's a bunch of garbage. And so representation is just a one part of that. And that's why it is so fetishized by these people.
Well, that's why I always get into Disney, because it's such a great example, because Disney is perhaps the most visible corporation promoting a lot of identity politics and leading with that, where if you dig into it,
more so now. It never used to be.
Well, no. I mean now. I mean current day Disney, and a lot of this goes back to wanting to get the socially responsible scores for corporations, the ESG scores. They want to get those. Disney, it's recently, we've had a lot of fun with the show She-Hulk, which became like this flashpoint of like fourth wave feminism. But what was really interesting to me about it is you had a lot of women who, fiercely defended this show, and none of them seemed to know, or they didn't care, that Disney is currently being sued for wage discrimination by several women.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That is representation, right? They're doing this. They do this show that went out of its way basically to troll the male fan base with a kind of very, half-assed feminist theme. And meanwhile, they're being sued for wage discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Here they are doing all of these they're doing a Black Little Mermaid, but they're thanking a Uyghur concentration camp in the closing credits of Mulan.
Pay no
Disney
attention.
is the ultimate neoliberal corporation.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, pretty much, right?
Yep. Look at this hand. Don't look at this hand. Look at that. Oh, puppet show. Don't look at what we're really doing.
Speaking of women representation, Collin, you brought this nightmare lady with us.
God, Crab, I know you're here. This is for you, buddy. Because you wanted me to talk about this. So our old friend, Miss Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks, apparently wrote an opinion piece this week in Newsweek where she gives an opinion where she says, "My fellow progressives, we need to stop the gaslighting on crime," which really got me. But we'll go into this and tear this apart.
She's never getting Madeleine Albright off her breath.
But anyway, she writes, "It's been breathtaking to watch the same Democrats who spent more than 2 years ordering Americans to trust COVID-related data turn around and reject statistics showing a clear rise in violent crime. A crime wave may not be convenient for the party in charge in the countdown for yesterday's midterm elections, but that doesn't make it any less real. The FBI's new released annual crime report, which isn't even complete, keep that in mind, estimates that 2021 saw 22,900 murders, bringing the nation's homicide rate to 6.9 per 100,000 people. It's the highest number in almost 25 years, followed by a 30% spike in homicides between 2019 and 2020. Cities like Philadelphia, New York, and Los Angeles broke annual homicide records, and there's been an uptick in other violent crimes like armed robbery and aggravated assault. It's no
Wrong.
wonder that It's no wonder that 61% of all voters, including 8 in 10 Black voters, told the Pew Research Center that violent crime is very important to their midterm votes. Yet all they get from Democrats and progressives is gaslighting. In an interview on MSNBC last week, New York Governor Kathy Hochul brushed off concerns about public safety as nothing more than a conservative conspiracy to brainwash Americans into thinking they're less safe. Is Governor Hochul under the impression that Black voters feel less safe because they're watching Fox News all day? All major crimes, with the exception of murder, are up in New York City this year. Police data show a 33% jump in robberies, a 58% rise in grand larceny, and a 31% increase in shooting incidents. Hochul's comments on the MSNBC show were so woefully tone deaf that she forced to walk them back in a subsequent interview on NY1 in a 180-degree turn that was reminiscent of another progressive forced to confront reality. This time,
Kasparian. Oh, gotcha.
Actually, hang tight because I'm gonna get there.
Yes, sir.
Somewhat. During a debate last March, Democratic candidate for mayor, Congresswoman Karen Bass, was asked to rate how safe she feels on the streets of Los Angeles. I do feel safe, Bass answered. On a scale of 1 to 10, Bass rated her perception of safety as a 10. That all changed 5 months later after 2 men burglarized her home and stole 2 of her handguns. My safety has been showered, Bass admitted, revisiting her personal safety rating to a 5 out of 10. The ordeal Bass experienced was awful, yet she was lucky. She wasn't confronted by armed individuals, as many Angelenos had been in a new trend.
Well, they weren't armed. That's why they needed to steal the guns.
Yes. Yep.
As many Angelenos have been in a new trend of follow home robberies, which authorities say involve 17 different gangs in the city.
Also, Anna Kasparian using a Karen as like an indicator for how someone feels safe in a city. That's what we're going with. I wouldn't trust the Karen, Anna. I'm just saying. I
wouldn't have taken Karen Bass to own 2 handguns. That's surprising to me.
Yeah, I would have.
Seemed like the type to be packing.
Yeah, she was
one minigun though. You know, 1 minigun, 2 handguns though. That's a little much. You know. Anyway, continue with this shit show.
As a progressive myself,
around
it's
like
been frustrating to see
Eastwood
members
with 2 guns in her.
of my.
She would be the ugly.
Walking around Beverly Hills with fucking 2 handguns.
Actually, you know what?
Well, Karen Bass is a big
I've never been to LA, but like, where in Los Angeles do these women feel like they need to have a handgun? They're not in like Compton.
The Hills.
I mean, from what I understand,
there's mountain lions and coyotes.
In LA.
You know, the nature is coming to eat the rich again. It's great. Anyway.
Yeah,
sorry, I disrupted.
No, I'm having fun. So that, like, so this is good. As a progressive myself, it's been frustrating to see members of my political group drop the ball. Poll after poll shows crime is one of voters' top concerns this election cycle. Yet, much like Governor Hochul and Representative Bass, progressive activists and politicians have downplayed the crime wave by blaming right-wing fear-mongering and conservative media for voters' concerns about public safety. Yeah. Prominent civil rights attorney Alec Carter-Costanzas regularly smears reporters as propagandists for simply reporting on crime statistics. Carter-Costanzas is the founder of the nonprofit called Civil Rights Corps that employs as its treasurer the progressive former San Francisco District Attorney Chesed Boudin, who was evicted from office earlier this year by voters sick of his soft-on-crime approach. As homicides were exploding in many parts of the country in the summer of 2021, Carter-Costanzas argued what constitutes a crime is determined by people in power who have a lot of money. Meanwhile, last year, progressive Congresswoman AOC similarly minimized concerns about crime surge in New York City at a virtual event with Representative Jamal Bowman, expressing fear that the crime stats were headline-driven hysteria at a time when New York was one of the 12 major cities experiencing a devastating homicide surge.
Wait. Anna's criticizing AOC? How dare she? How dare she? God, ask them the question. Sorry,
you don't have that clip, though.
I
right?
don't. I should. But
you should.
Yeah.
In reality, the right's messaging on crime is potent because the crime wave is real and it's negatively impacting the lives of the same minorities and working people the left claims to represent. Take the polling from last year's defund the police ballot measures in Minneapolis, which proposed replacing their troubled police department with a new Department of Public Safety. The proposals sought a comprehensive health approach to public safety that would dispatch mental health workers to certain emergency calls while also investing more resources into crime prevention and removing the city's mandated minimum number of deputies based on the city's population. With 99% of the precincts reporting, 58% of voters rejected the proposal, including a resounding 7% of Black voters. And this despite the fact that the measure's supporters outspent their opponents by $3 million. The outcome was far from surprising. A recent survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation and Agriho found that only 17% of Black voters support decreasing funding for the police departments in the area. Nearly double that of Black voters, 34%, said they would actually like to see police funding increase, but most wanted to keep the police funding the same. I've seen the crime wave and the police shortage play out firsthand in Los Angeles, a city where I was born and raised and still live today. Yet when I vocalize my own concerns about crime, my fellow progressives gaslight me and demand I reject what I've seen with my own eyes. I've been told repeatedly that it's all in my head, even after I was sexually assaulted by a stranger in my neighborhood earlier this year. But it's working class Angelenos who bear the brunt of the crime wave. From March 2020 through February 2022, LA's Transportation Authority reported a total of 235 assault and battery cases at Union Station. According to the Los Angeles Times, violent crime at the station shot up 94% in the first 2 months of 2022 compared to the same period last year. Property crime also doubled. The Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Agency finally agreed to provide extra security for Union Station workers after several of them suffered unprovoked physical attacks. But it wasn't soon enough for Alberto Mendez, a janitor at Union Station, who was violently assaulted by a homeless man who threatened to rape and kill her as she was waxing the tile floors, for emergency room nurse Sandra Shells, killed in a random attack while sitting at a bus stop across the street from Union Station earlier this year.
It sounds like a Republican stump speech.
Hence
anyway,
my title of this segment.
Yes.
Like Nurse Shells, the custodian workers at Union Station aren't wealthy elites who just want to arrest the homeless, a common accusation progressives use to silence anyone who expresses concern about crime in major cities. Clearly, simply being homeless is not a crime and should never be treated as such. Well, it's funny you say that because you had a problem with it.
You had a problem with it not that long ago.
But committing a violent assault, like randomly stabbing an unsuspecting woman with gardening shears and crushing her skull in the process, should land anyone in custody regardless of their housing status.
Gardening shears is at least inventive. Like, there's not been a horror movie with gardening shears, you know? Like, that's not happened. Like, at least be inventive with your murders, you know?
In the new Halloween movie, he stabs someone with like a fluorescent light bulb.
Yeah.
That's been done before.
Yeah, that one's been classic. Light bulb man did that back in, you know, like
listen, man, I've been watching splatter films since I was like 8. I've seen everything.
Right.
I promise you that's been done before.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this whole article just gets a big one of like
play it again.
What?
Play it again. There
That's a good sound drop too.
What is that?
That's
Jimmy
Joker.
laughing.
I like the Joker like giggle up there a little bit there.
Yeah.
Oh, bitches.
What? Sorry, we have fun here. Anyway,
The same can be said of the man who beat 40-year-old Jessica Christick's golden retriever mix to death in Brooklyn earlier this year. Oh, puppies.
not the puppy.
Somehow the perpetrator is still roaming in the park, free to terrorize others in the neighborhood. When Christick reached out to her city council representative, Shahana Hanif, for help, a spokesman called the situation complicated. We don't believe that the NYPD is a vehicle to bring safety to our communities, a spokesperson said.
Hey, that golden retriever had drugs on him. All right? Like, you know, stand your ground laws in California. They're doing all right, you know?
It would be a mistake to think that the public isn't open to necessary criminal justice reform. They just want to make sure that policy changes are balanced by the needs of public safety. But when a political group pushing for reform consistently downplays a crime wave as nothing more than right-wing fear-mongering while simultaneously pushing for maximalist police and prison abolition, it's impossible to find them trustworthy. I'm urging my fellow progressives to take crime seriously.
It's just funny. Like, she's complaining about progressives saying that a way of thinking is right wing. Like, she is.
Right.
Like, hypocrisy thy name, Kasparian. Like, you know, what? I know you got more on this.
Oh no, like, so we are actually going into, because she mentions Pew. So let's go into a little bit more, because there was some information that I think, well, like, it meant her narrative, it wouldn't fit, omitted from this article. So let's take a look at this. So this is a tweet from Judd Legume. And this actually is from the Pew Research Center,
Bean Man,
where he says, America's violent crime wave, quote unquote, is a hoax. Over the past 30 years, violent crime is down dramatically, and there's no recent increase. So federal studies show no increase in U.S. violent crime rates since the start of the pandemic. And there's the chart right there. So we're actually going to go into, if you zoom out, Reef.
But Anna had Karen tell her. You remember.
Right. So let's go into what Pew Research Center did say. So violent crime is a key midterm voting issue, but what does the data say? Political candidates around the United States have released thousands of ads focusing violent crime this year, Anna included, and most registered voters see the issue as very important in November 8 midterm elections. But political statistics from the federal government paint a complicated picture when it comes to recent changes in the U.S. violent crime rate. With Election Day approaching, here's a closer look at voters' attitudes about violent crime, as well as an analysis of the nation's violent crime rate itself. All findings are drawn from center surveys and the federal government's two primary measures of crime: a large annual survey from the Bureau of Justice Statistics and an annual study of local police data from the FBI. Number one, around 6 in 10 registered voters, 61%, said violent crime is very important when making their decision about who to vote for in this year's congressional elections. That's what Anna stated. Violent crime ranks among energy policy and healthcare in perceived importance as a midterm issue, but far below the economy, according to the center's October survey. Number two, Republican voters are much more likely than Democrat voters to see violent crime as a key voting issue this year. Roughly 3/4 of Republican and GOP-leaning registered voters, 73%, say violent crime is very important to their vote, compared with around half of Democratic or Democratic-leaning registered voters, 49%. Number three, older voters are more likely than younger ones to see violent crime as a key election issue. 3/4 of registered voters aged 65 and older say violent crime is a very important issue voting issue for them this year, compared with fewer than half the voters under 30 at 44%. Number 4, Black voters are particularly likely to say violent crime is a very important midterm issue. Black Americans have consistently been more likely than other racial and ethnic groups to express concern about violent crime, and that remains the case this year. Some 81% of Black registered voters say violent crime is very important to their midterm vote, compared to 65% of Hispanic and 56% of white voters. There are not enough Asian American voters in the Center survey to analyze independently. Difference by race are especially pronounced among Democratic registered voters, while 82% of Black Democratic voters say violent crime is very important. Only a third of white voters, Democratic voters, say the same. Number 5, annual government surveys from the Bureau of Justice Statistics show no recent increase in the U.S. violent crime rate. In 2021, the most recent year with available data, there were 16.5 violent crimes for every 1,000 Americans ages 12 and older. That was statistically unchanged from the year before, below the pre-pandemic levels and far below the rates recorded in the 90s, according to the National Crime Victimization Survey. For each of the 4 violent crimes tracked in the survey, simple assault, aggravated assault, robbery, and rape/sexual assault, there was no statistically significant increase either in 2020 or 2021. The National Crime Victimization Survey is fielded each year among, scroll down, Reef.
Yep.
Approximately 240,000 Americans ages 12 and older, and asked them to describe any recent experiences they had with crime. The survey counts threatened, attempted, and completed crimes, whether or not they were reported to the police. Notably, it does not track the most serious form of violent crime, murder, because it's based on interviews with surviving crime victims.
There's been a murder.
Right.
Oh, God, this
Any
guy.
thoughts on this before we go into this a little bit more?
Hello?
Yeah. Oh.
Not really. I mean, it sounds like about what I know to be.
Okay, well, she specifically was talking about the murder rate, right? So do those stats contradict what she's saying about the murder rate? Because this says these stats don't include the murder rate.
Right.
Oh, she was talking about crime overall, too.
Oh.
I mean, she mentioned
but at one
arson
point,
and...
she does, but as I recall, in terms of numbers, like hard numbers, she focuses on the murder rate, and maybe that's
she
why
conflates that the other way, like because everything else would say otherwise. You know,
that's what I'm saying. Like that might be why she just focused on the murder rate,
right?
Yeah,
rather than the other stat.
But clearly pandering to the right wing. Clearly,
right. And then just the idea that she kind of picked and choose stats that kind of fit her essay, that's what I'm going to call it, without considering the other factors that Pew, and again, like, I guess Pew is okay, but the idea, like, there's, as they said, it's a little more complicated than what Anna was saying in terms of, like, how do you define crime, you know, which I think she kind of interpreted one way based, I think probably in part due to her personal experience, which again, like, you know, sorry for her, you know, just as far as what she went through, but doesn't discount the fact that, like, you know, overall, you know, like she just kind of made it sound as if, like, yeah, it was very much reminiscent of the 90s where there was a high rate of crime, which according to the research has not been the case. If anything, you know, crime has been, you know, has kind of stayed level, if not actually been about the same. But what I kind of noticed that what Anna didn't mention, even as she was mentioning crime, is I wish she kind of talked about, like, the why, you know, even if she made that argument, like, why is crime rising? And like, there are plenty of people have said, you know, it's tied to poverty. And given the pandemic, you know, obviously in light of, you know, the pandemic, people losing their jobs, you know, wages have been stagnant, would naturally bring up a more elevated crime rate. And I think especially among lower class communities where a lot of those opportunities are nearly non-existent, you know, you probably will see a lot more of that, which is why obviously for Black people, you know, crime is a huge issue for us. So when she, like, So when she is saying all of that, but then when like calls for defund the police, which she does mention here, but she kind of downplayed it. And then with Cenk, which I remember back in September when he went off on this on Twitter, and I know like he got a hell to pay for this, on this subject. So he wrote, and unfortunately I couldn't see what Anna said because she blocked me.
She blocked you, really?
He did block me.
I'm also blocked. I think Uyghur unblocked me though, interestingly enough.
But he says you can't claim to speak for the left if polls indicate that actual human beings who are on the left don't like your ideas. And if they like your ideas, but you're bungling it by making your ideas sound worse through the names and the framing, then that's on you. Do better. The people who came up with defund the police slogan admitted they were wrong. It was mildly counterproductive framing. You don't speak for the left, and neither do people pushing for counterproductive abolish prisons. Polls show that almost no one on the left agrees with you. And,
Fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember this because, like I said, I think he might have gotten ratioed for this. To the point where TYT had to bring on Olayemi on to kind of talk through this with them. So I do want to play a little bit of that clip where she talks about, prison abolishment and kind of what she says to them here. So Reef, if you don't mind playing that video.
Yes, sir.
But what we're saying is, listen, we currently have a massive prison industrial complex. This is a country that once went from 200,000 people, maybe nationwide, being in prison to now 2 million people. More prisons begets more prisons. They make more. The more we incarcerate, the more they continue to incarcerate and police these same kinds of communities. But yet, every day we say crime is getting worse. We don't feel any safer. We have the same exact hysteria despite constantly giving more money to police, constantly putting more money into the criminal system. So what we're saying is instead of the resources that we've placed in building this large prison industrial complex, let's instead address the root causes of crimes. Because I know people tend to think an abolitionist is an anarchist, the purge, we want danger. That's not what it is. What we're saying is the same communities that are being criminalized, the same communities that you're calling the criminal defendants, those are the victims too, right? It's the same communities being over policed are the same communities being over incarcerated. So they're also under resourced. As a public defender, I could say the vast majority of the people in the criminal system live well beneath the poverty line. And when I say well beneath the poverty line, I myself identify as the poor and I would not be able to afford my own services. I mean, completely destitute. And so if the majority of the people in the system are this, they're under resourced in that way. And the issues that we're having are coming out of those communities and not having the resources for mental health. There are more people in America, there are more people suffering from mental health issues in prisons than there are in mental health hospitals. But we have that. We're saying, okay, let's start taking that money away from the police. We have overinflated budgets. We have large police forces, so much that one would argue that this is a police state. If by over time, we start taking this money away and instead putting it into the community infrastructure, we will eventually have a society that doesn't rely on mass incarceration. So it's a step by step.
So yeah, I think, just from this, again, she talked to Anna and Cenk about this back in September, I believe. And the fact that she's writing this article now in November, I think is especially heinous. The fact that, and a lot of what Yemi said, and I don't agree with her takes often, but I agree with her on this. And I feel if anything, Anna could have said, in the article, like a lot of this crime is based upon the fact of that is connected to the economy, which Democrats did not run on, and it would have been a prime time for her to kind of say, if she was going to kind of attack oppressives, being like, hey, progressives, crime is up, like maybe focus on the economic issues that are existing in these neighborhoods. And if she really wants to go to it, kind of explain what's happening in Los Angeles, because I know like TYT has talked about the 10 cities that have increased over time, maybe mention that in as far as like the part of the thesis of the article. But instead, she kind of makes like a huge dog whistle to the right and making these right-wing talking points to kind of give cover as far as the squad to be like, oh, squad, or progressives, you need to do something about crime here, where she was very, well, not vague. The one give her credit for being vague. She didn't kind of talk about, as far as one, the underlying issues, but then she didn't give much nuance, to it. It was just basically like crime is up based on, Republicans, and not giving any credit, progressives do better. Whereas no, progressives, once upon a time ran on defund the police. And I'm not saying that would have been the only thing that she should have covered. But again, given that, a lot of it is tied to economics, mention that in the article, which she failed to do. So I felt. Go ahead.
Well, remember, Cenk was a Republican, and
Right.
I find with a lot of those, Republican converts, there's a reason they were Republicans. He has some conservative tendencies, and I think as he gets older, they're coming out more and more. And I mean, they probably wouldn't get along if she weren't kind of the same way. They wouldn't have been partners for all these years.
Mhm.
And they're getting older. People have a tendency to get even more conservative, and I think they were already kind of conservative. And we've mentioned on the show a few times, particularly recently, about them, this whole class of alternative media people. They're setting themselves up to be the next wave of mainstream media.
Yeah.
And I mean, her kissing Madeleine Albright's ass really gave away the game. I mean, it really signaled that they're all prepared to do access journalism and to just take the place of the old guard. That's really where they're coming from.
Right.
That having been said, we've talked a lot about this subject on the show.
Mhm.
This is where the left always does. She does have a valid point in there. I agree that she's not giving it any context, economic context. This is the problem. This is the trap. And it's kind of similar to one thing in Hedges' article that I thought was overly simplistic, but as Keaton's pointing out, Hedges just bangs these things out like copy and paste at this point.
Well, and Master Jekyll and Rockfin mentions the it asks if they mention white collar crime rates in there at all, which I didn't hear Anna talk about that.
Right.
That's I mean, that's a point, but in terms of this, the left has always been between a rock and a hard place on this. And this whole discussion of reforming the criminal justice system, the last time we had a serious movement in this direction was in the 60s and 70s. And it ended with the election of Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. And before that, it precipitated the election of Richard Nixon. This never ends well for the left.
You could say that for lots of things.
This in particular, and this is why this is a trap for the left. Anna, I don't even think she's really smart enough, frankly, to get into the weeds
minutia on this.
I don't think she's even aware of the broader context.
No, because
the capitalist system would need to be reformed for you not to need to brutalize the population to keep crime down. So unless you completely reform the system, you need cops out there cracking heads and mass incarcerating people if you don't want an explosion in crime.
Right.
That is the price of the system that we have. And whenever the left turns around and says we need to scale back on brutalizing and suppressing the population in order to make capitalism work, there's an uptick in crime, and boom, you empower this right-wing backlash. That's happened every time the left has tried to go down this road. You cannot deal with the police without dealing with the system that is causing the crime in the first place.
Right.
And the reason, as you point out, that the African American community is much higher than the white community on thinking crime is a problem. Who the fuck's neighborhoods do they protect?
Yep.
Where do they send the cops? Right? They're exactly. They're covering Park Avenue just fine where I am. I live in Harlem. I believe the Young Turks themselves have made this point that it's kind of elitist. You have to have a certain amount of privilege to dismiss the crime question. That's true in a sense, because those people's neighborhoods tend not to be the unsafe neighborhood, the people who would dismiss this as an issue. But that broader context is the system creates this problem generation after generation, and the left keeps trying to address it without addressing the cause, and it always blows up in their face, and it's blowing up in their face now, and that's what she's identifying without putting it in any context. She's not wrong in terms of a political analysis.
No.
But one of the really interesting things about this, though, is that yesterday, when the country voted, this really didn't blow up in their face as much as a lot of people thought it would.
No.
Right? I mean, this was not a good night for paranoid suburban wannabe Hitlers who dream of sucking off police officers. Like, it really was not. Right?
That's true.
There was not this huge anti-crime reactionary vote out there. And so, and that's what, to me, is interesting about this article in a slightly different way, is when it was timed. She published this article on Monday, and it seems to me like this was put out there as an own. She wanted to own her fellow progressives because she wanted to be able to one. She wanted, and I told you so moment, because she figured the Democrats were going to get their asses handed to them largely because of crime on Tuesday, and she wanted to be on the record the Monday before.
I urged you.
Them. Right. I urged you. Right. That to me is what strikes. But that's not how it happened. To me, the most encouraging takeaway of these midterms is the fact that this very cruel, and just insensitive, sort of reactionary sentiment when it comes to crime and policing and prison and cash bail did not win the day. Oddly enough, where it came close was in New York, right? I mean, New York is where crime was more of an issue than in a lot of these more moderate states.
I don't know that the issue is not potent so much as that people wanted their abortions more than they wanted more cops.
But I mean, look,
an abortion more than they wanted.
No, listen, I started the show by saying crime did hurt Democrats a little bit in these major cities. So it's not a non-issue, but it did not cause the kind of wave that we thought it might.
No.
That we thought it might.
And I think that's
because I think that's because, to Collin's point, I think people are more aware of the causes of crime, to the extent that there is an increase in crime now. And I understand nationally crime numbers are down. In certain cities, it is up, though, right? So that Pew poll doesn't address certain pockets of the country, certain major cities where they are showing increases, right? But people, I think, understand that crime is I think voters were actually, to their credit, able to put this in context that Anna left out of her article. Right. They were able to realize, hey, maybe the reason we have crime is because we had a pandemic that drove everyone broke and crazy. Right. And we don't have a living wage in this country, and we don't have universal health care in this country. So, of course, there's going to be crime. And the way to fix crime is not to put more cops on the streets, more jails, longer sentences, ending cash bail. It's ridiculous. Yeah, and the voters did see through that for the most part on Tuesday. No,
you go to Target right now. They have washing soap for your clothes locked up, which has never happened before. Like,
no, at Walmart, I shop Instacart.
Is being
batteries locked up. Yeah.
Why is that's what we're seeing right
now. The necessities are locked up.
Over the summer, the ice cream was locked up at freaking Rite Aid.
Well, that's because Nancy was out and about. They didn't get her back in the room.
Look, and not to say I would do it, but if given the opportunity, especially if I was put out, I would steal some too. I get it, but at the same time, I think a lot of people now, because especially from the pandemic, have physically seen it, are them putting two and two together and being like, yeah, people are struggling here to the point where they have to go and feel like they have to maybe steal something in order to live.
But that's not the kind of crime that threatens public safety, right?
It's
Somebody
like,
stealing a pack of batteries is
yeah,
not a
like,
threat
you're
to Anna
stealing,
Kasparian
like,
or Karen
yeah.
Bass or anybody.
Right. You're
Yeah.
stealing like formula because your kids can't eat. You know, you're stealing, you know, washing liquid, you know, in the sense to wash your clothes in order to have clothes for the week or whatever. So
a lot of times where these statistics can be misleading is they'll tell you that crime or murder doubled in the subway year over year. But what they don't tell you is that means it went from 4 to 8.
Yeah.
Out of hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, and also,
sure, it did double, but you know, living here in New York City, I could say coming out of the bunker, when we first came out of the bunker last year, yeah, things were sketch, man. Things were sketch. Things were fucking weird, man. There was a weird energy on the street. There was a whole shooting gallery set up in Washington Square Park.
Where a guy got a toaster
like
oven
in a long time.
plugged into the third rail. You know what I'm saying? Like, just weird stuff happening. Like, I gotta get my toast, man. Like, you know, third rail's got power. I don't see the city using it. You know, I'm doing my thing here.
Trains
all right?
aren't coming.
You know, just fucking look, Chrissy, Chrissy, tell me if the train is coming. All right, Chrissy. You know, no.
But
we also
but now, I mean, things are pretty quiet. I mean, I'm not really seeing an increase in crime.
We know that like policing isn't solving these crimes that they're talking about. Murder goes mainly unsolved. Like, and go down the line of like crime with victims not being solved. Cops are not fixing that problem or preventing that problem.
Here in New York, Kathy Hochul came within 5 points of losing. I mean, she beat Lee Zeldin, but she won narrowly. The 3 House races in the Hudson Valley, which we talked about earlier, it looks like the Republicans are going to win 2 out of those 3, right? And there was a piece in Politico that came out last week that said that the Democrats were bracing for embarrassing results. They thought maybe even Hochul would lose the race, but they knew that those Congress seats were in trouble, and they were going to pin this on Eric Adams. They were going to blame Eric Adams for the Democrats' losses in these areas because he was elected to solve the crime problem and he didn't do it, right? And once again, you know, it's not that everyone saw through this propaganda, but I think a lot of voters did. I mean, what was Eric Adams going to do? You can't solve crime now without a living wage and health care.
Right.
All right. Because the drivers of crime are people going broke and people going crazy and getting desperate. And the only way to prevent crime at this point is to actually build a societal infrastructure so that people can have some stability in their lives. That's the only way to do it. And if that's off the table, and the reason that's off the table, part of the reason that is off the table is because a lot of, you know, so-called progressive energy gets funneled into articles like that, articles like she wrote, right? Not addressing these causes, not actually making the case, hey, we need to talk about the real causes of crime. We shouldn't deny crime where it exists, but you have to put it in a context so that people understand that the way to deal with crime is not to empower the right wing who's just going to build more jails and hire more cops and keep people in prison for longer and, you know, deny cash bail to people who have not committed violent crimes, right? They don't let murderers out on $500 bail, right? So that's a red herring. The answer is to explain the causes and address them, and that is the role of progressive media, right? If that's not the role of progressive media, what is? Instead, she published this article as an I told you so, and it turned out not to be an I told you so because crime was not the albatross around the neck of the Democrats, Democrats, the way a lot of people thought it was going.
And I think especially being in this
Excuse me.
space, you would think she would know better, because no one was talking about crime. Like, it's important, but like, I feel like even like the bigger channels knew it's economy that people were more concerned about. So if you're going to talk about it, bring it to that. If you're going to address crime.
Well, look,
the
media and the pollsters bear a lot of blame for this, because pollsters, especially some of the right-wing pollsters, which have been more accurate in previous cycles, right? Polling outfits like Trafalgar, Insider Advantage, they skew right. But because the Trump base has generally been underpolled the last couple cycles, people took them a little more seriously. There was a barrage of polling that came out signaling a red wave that really was never there. A lot of media ran with that because it makes for a good story. It's a dramatic story. Like Russell was saying, media is about conflict, right? Conflict is what sells. You have to create a story. And so a lot of people got carried away with that, thinking that there was going to be this giant anti-crime backlash, and there really wasn't. And I think she fell for it.
Yeah.
Boy, does the media love crime.
Okay, one story she mentions. This is where I feel like we do need to kind of push back on certain excesses that you do see. She tells the story about the dog, about the golden retriever, I think it was, that got beaten to death in Brooklyn Park. Okay, so there was a really interesting follow-up article done on this, because somebody in the neighborhood tried to organize a neighborhood watch in response to that. And you had some people who I would call, man, with these people, I always tell them, dude, can you just identify as Republican, because you do so much fucking damage to the electoral prospects of the left. So you had a bunch of like white kids show up at this meeting. We're not super into you organizing this kind of group. We're not super into you going and looking in like vigilante style for this man who is clearly suffering from mental health issues. Okay, we need to disown those kinds of fucking people. And I feel like this article, yeah, man, I mean, she's not wrong to bring up that kind of shit as very damaging politically.
Yeah.
And what they're talking about, look, this is where things can go off the rails. Like, I think the police, this guy is still very infamously walking around this park because nobody seems to know what to do, because the police are afraid at this point. Like, they don't want to be accused of anything. They don't want to be told they're brutalizing a mentally ill man. And as you could see from what happened when they tried to organize a neighborhood watch, there are clearly people in this, by the way, very wealthy part of Brooklyn, Park Slope, where this happened.
Yeah.
Very wealthy.
I know what we could do. Okay. We're going to call Tyler Perry and we're going to film a Tyler Perry movie in this park, and Medea will find the killer. I guarantee Medea will find the killer. Guarantee. And she will fuck that killer up with a pan. It's going to be an amazing scene. Just let it happen. All right.
No, you don't know Medea very well. She'll be packing, man.
Oh yeah. She will. Yeah, but she'll hit him with the pan first.
What the council person's saying, that it's not a police matter, you know, in the sense that this guy should not be going to Rikers, but you might need police to go get him, to send him to mental health facilities. You know, so I think that's what she's drawing attention to, but not in a context.
Yeah. Anyway, we got to get to our last story, as much fun as that story was.
This will probably also be fun too.
Yes. So Cop 27, speaking of crime, not that kind of cop, but still just as bad. So this is this climate event that's been happening over in Egypt. Many of the world's wealthy elite have been flying their 747s over there, to make sure that we stop using our fossil fuels. Just in case people were wondering what was going on, that many, like that many planes, like that many. Case people wanted to know, hundreds of private jets, which this event brought to you by Coca-Cola. Just in case people didn't know what that looked like, that's what that looks like. I mean, at least they're using an electric vehicle, though.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're moving the baggage around the right way.
This picture also great choice on that one. That time lapse must have been a long time to get all those planes. Had to time it all at the right time. This also great image, good images from this. The right can definitely meme. That's a nice meme, you know?
Yep.
Nice meme.
I agree. Another nice meme. Like this is just like, what are these Escalades? Like this is like that.
Yes, Escalades,
these are the tanks. Like Obama made these popular, right? If I remember correctly, these Escalade limos.
Did he?
Chrysler 3. Well, he had like the Chrysler 300 ones. I remember. That's the one he said.
I think it was Dolomite actually.
Definitely. Rudy Ray Moore definitely did that. You know? What is it? Dolomite is my name and fuck it up motherfuckers is my game. Dolomite's great. Also Petey Wheatstraw, also a very good movie. People should check it out. Sponsored by Coca-Cola.
Oh, wow, man. You're kicking it old school there.
I know, right? Rudy Ray Moore's cult classic goodness. I love it to death. Have you seen Black Dynamite, like the parody of those movies?
I did, yeah.
There's so many. The Militant Stand Startled. I love that movie so much. Anyway, brought to you by Coca-Cola. This COP27, which is the world's top plastic polluter, in case people were wondering. Produce 120 billion throwaway plastic bottles a year. That's a lot.
Well, that's why they sponsored, because they now what they want to do is listen,
Yes. Yeah. Very much. They're sorry.
Listen now and learn.
They're sorry.
Speak less and listen more.
Right. They're going to speak less and listen
There's
more.
a lot of that going around.
Yeah.
Yep. So this event being hosted by a U.S.-backed military dictator who overthrew Egypt's only ever democratically elected leader and effectively killed him in detention. Remarkable how nobody is saying that. Craig Murray weighing in.
Well, you don't want to be a wet blanket.
Yep. Yep. Speaking of wet blankets, the official COP27 app being used as a surveillance tool for the Egyptian government. Here's what we know, says now this, which I have the footage. Play the footage.
So the Egyptian government might be spying on me? Turns out that the COP27 app is suspected to be a surveillance tool by the Egyptian government, which could put many activists and journalists at risk. The official COP27 app was flagged by cybersecurity analysis to The Guardian, saying that it was a cartoon supervillain of an application.
Also, The Guardian somehow manages to get leaks all the time. Don't know how that works. They must be friends. But anyway.
Reportedly, downloading the app allows backdoor access to collect data, including photos, location, and emails. All sensitive information that could be used to surveil the important activists and government officials attending the climate conference. Now, The Guardian reports that the app has been downloaded over 5,000 times, and I myself have downloaded it, which is concerning. While there hasn't...
Bro, you didn't need to tell us that. You could have kept that to yourself. Your L's you could have silent. It's okay.
Been any official communication from the Egyptian government or the UNFCCC about the app, experts have said that deleting the app is not enough to prevent a phone from being compromised. Now, there are other more obvious ways in which the country has instituted surveillance. For example, all of the taxis were outfitted with cameras and send audio and video information to a security observatory. There are also restrictions on organized protests. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's regime has a track record of cracking down on dissent. While it's impossible to know how many people are currently being held in Egypt's prisons, Human Rights First estimated about 65,000 political prisoners in 2019. Now, we'll be keeping tabs on all issues related to COP26.
Yeah, they will. As probably will we. Zordon, I'm busy. Jesus.
So the Egyptian.
But anyway, so we get Greta. Greta's here. Greta. How dare you, Greta? During COP27, we urge the Egyptian authorities to immediately and unconditionally release all those held simply for peacefully exercising their human rights, implementing criteria set by local NGOs for these releases, fairness, transparency, inclusiveness, and urgency. So, one of these prisoners is Alaa Abd El Fattah, who is now on a water strike since the beginning of COP27. I think this now is like 4 days of that.
That's about the limit for the human body.
Yep, we're getting there. Also, he's been on hunger strike for months now, I do believe.
Oh, and now he went on a water strike?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
yep.
He's not going to last.
So a system that doesn't address the needs for climate justice and securing human rights is a system that has failed everyone. We need to keep both in mind. So 2 days ago, the Egyptian activist and political prisoner, this was on November 8th, stopped drinking water to protest against his arrest. His life is now in the hands of those fighting for his immediate release. This is his sister at Sana 2, speaking to you all at COP27. Hashtag free them all. And play the clip.
Während wir hier bei der Klimakonferenz in Ägypten Klimagerechtigkeit verhandeln sollen, sind Tausende, wahrscheinlich 10.000 Menschen in Ägypten in politischer Gefangenschaft. Einer von ihnen ist der Menschenrechtsaktivist, Blogger und Intellektuelle Alaa. Er ist eine der treibenden Kräfte gewesen.
So he's Arab Spring guy.
2011. Und neben mir steht Sana, das ist die Schwester von Alaa, mit einer ganz, ganz klaren Botschaft an alle da draußen, auch an Deutschland und die Bundesregierung.
I'm Sana, the sister of Arab Fattah, who's currently languishing in Egyptian prisons. We are British Egyptians. We've been urging the British government to get us proof of life for Alaa. Alaa has escalated to a water strike 2 days ago. He has stopped water. We're really worried about his well-being. I urge you to raise awareness about the human rights situation in Egypt. I urge you to talk about the political prisoners in Egypt. We're estimated to have over 60,000 political prisoners in Egypt, and the kind of relationship that now exists between our governments, the Egyptian and the German government, is not one that cherishes human rights. Egypt was for 3 years in a row the #1 purchaser of weapons from Germany. These are weapons we cannot afford and we do not need. We need these relationships to change. We need Germany to put human rights at the core of its foreign policy when engaging with the Egyptian government.
Yeah. So they still didn't even know at this point if he was alive or not.
Right.
So hold on. Every time I gotta pause it. Next one, please. Thank you. So Sky News weighs in a little bit. So they're bringing to light this altercation. Don't touch me, you're here on Egyptian land. The Egyptian MP was removed from COP27 news conference about jailed hunger striker Alaa Abd El Fattah after he questioned whether the British Egyptian was a political prisoner. And here he is, which we saw him in this video a minute ago.
Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech.
I am sitting. Freedom of speech. I am here. I am talking to her. She said that we are not from the Egyptian authority. No, don't touch me. I am the Egyptian parliament. No, you don't. You are here in the Egyptian land. You are here in the Egyptian land. Don't touch me. You are here in the Egyptian land. Okay? I will set. I ask her the question. She should answer me. Okay. She said that we are from the Egyptian authority. You are not from the Egyptian authority.
That's fine. So let's discuss
Okay.
it. Let's discuss it.
And that wasn't enough. He wasn't spared.
Just a little bit of like, do you know who I am? Sprinkled in there would have done well. I feel like. So he essentially is questioning whether this is just a political prisoner. He's saying the guy was like a terrorist of the state, essentially. Which is the claim. The Arab Spring generation is a generation that is tired, that is exhausted, that has languished in prisons and in morgues. Enough, says that same sister we saw earlier. So yeah, the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, more commonly referred to as the Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC, or COP27 for short, is off to a great start. Real good start so far.
Well,
hopefully the next one in Dubai does a little better.
We were talking about this a little bit on the live stream yesterday. I take in everyone's media, including the right wing. And you said the right memes really well. Yeah, they're having a field day with this because the right very effectively points out the hypocrisy of these events to reinforce their argument, which is not incorrect. Like, they're coming from a place of they don't want to do anything about climate change. That part I don't agree with.
Yes.
But their basic premise that this is something that they're going to put on your shoulders while they fly around on their private jets. They're going to be telling you to eat cricket burgers while they can still get a nice hamburger. They're not wrong about that. And they'll use that to frame the immigration debate, because they'll take people, celebrities speaking out for refugees, and then they'll talk about the neighborhood they live in, where there's not a brown face to be found within 20 square miles. And they'll show the houses they live in that they're not opening up to any refugees. And you know what? It's a very effective line of attack that they're the elite spokespeople for a lot of these causes very much live in a spirit of do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. They themselves are not willing to make any kinds of meaningful sacrifices. When you have $100 million and you give away $1 million, it's really not a sacrifice, right? So they very effectively manipulate what is a reality. It's right down the strike zone. This kind of conference makes it very easy for them to discredit the entire climate movement by putting this face on it.
Well, look who shows up. Look who shows up. We have Emmanuel Macron, Rishi Sunak. They're here.
Right.
What does the body language expert say about this one though? Can we get the body language expert in?
Awkward.
Sure. Why is this weird gripping elbow pushing away like it literally is like your thumbnail of 6 things I hate about you the other day. Like, it's literally that pose. It's like you need,
take the damn picture, take the damn picture, take the damn picture, take it,
hurry up.
No, you know what it is? You know what it is? I'm looking at this. They're probably realizing, I gotta take camera. So it's just like, just getting the pose ready. That's what it looks like to me. Because it's funny because I did create that thumbnail. It's the same pose.
It looks like one of those Burlington Coat Factory ads.
Well,
a little bit.
Yeah, I think the screenshot I got of Rishi Sunak for that thumbnail I did, it may have been from GQ, but it definitely looked like GQ-esque, kind of model stand. So I feel like that's what Rishi is doing that. I'm
Madonna
not sure
taught him how to
Macron-
vogue, is what you're telling me?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
Sure.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure what Macron is doing.
Ugh.
Jesus Christ.
Ugh. Like, so this is the dude here. We have I don't know if this is the right I expect, but whatever. Paul Joseph Watson on Twitter. This is the dude who will be lecturing you about your carbon footprint at COP27. Which, how much does he pay for a private helicopter trip to a Tory dinner? £10,000.
Yeah. And listen, Paul Joseph Watson is maybe the best at this of any of the right-wing commentators that I know. He is really, really good at illustrating elite hypocrisy on left issues,
Yep.
left social
Well, and it's like,
policies.
what? Also, why would he pay £10,000 when his ears are clearly capable of flight? Like,
Yeah,
clearly, you don't need to pay that much, man. Just like, you need a ramp.
Well,
That's all you need.
I was watching. Russell Brand dug up a little interview that he was doing, before he became prime minister. It was him and his father, and he was saying, I have friends of all different classes, working class, and then he caught himself. He said, "Well, not working class."
No, I think I played. No, I played that clip. I think I played that clip on that stream.
It was hilarious. Like, well, I wouldn't go that far.
So here's Rishi, old Rishi. We need to act faster on the climate emergency, says Rishi Sunak. We need a greener planet and a more prosperous future. It's morally right to honor our climate pledges, and yet our PM comes away from COP27 with a gas deal. Bam, bam, bam. Climate hypocrisy at its worst. The Telegraph. Rishi Sunak to strike gas deal with U.S. to ease energy crisis.
I think you would have needed chunks there.
Yeah.
Well, this is something we've talked about on the show, and it's a conundrum that the left hasn't even begun to talk about. There may not be a democratic way to deal with the climate crisis. Look how people reacted to an increase in gas prices. So how are they going to vote for higher energy prices? They're not. By the time you make alternative energy more cost effective than gas, it's too late. It's too late for the planet.
Which they can't, because a lot of the parts are not, and we reported on this too, are not necessarily compatible for the shit here. But then not only that, it's like for electric cars, for example, they're not cheap. So it's like you're gonna ask again the working class who has no money to switch to an electric car that they can't afford, and then like our transportation infrastructure, this being in New York, is shit. So like literally falling apart, so so it's just kind of like a worse situation here. Like they want us to do all these things, but yet they're not giving us the means to have it, and then and it's not accessible to us. So
the things you would need to do, the people are not going to vote for that. And if you try to do it, they're going to vote for the first person who promises to undo what you did.
Yeah.
This very well just might be something that democracy is not equipped to deal with.
So, people who've been trying to deal with it, although weird tactics, Just Stop Oil. I don't know if you know those peeps. They're the ones super gluing themselves to Monets.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, they're a little weird, right? Like very convenient. They all come out now. I mean, I'm not saying, but I'm saying. So if you missed Rishi Sunak's speech at COP27, you didn't miss much. Despite talking about the climate crisis, he managed to avoid the words oil, gas, coal, fossil fuels, emergency, crisis, heating, heat waves, fire, and death. Until we stop licensing new oil and gas, these words are our legacy. So,
what did he say then? I'm just curious, what did he say?
Well, here we go. We have a little bit of what he said,
Okay.
followed by a bit of a bamboozle, because why would we want to watch him anyway? You know, a little bit of a bamboos. Play. Load, play.
We can bequeath our children a greener planet.
Bequeath. Sorry, my inner butthead, you know?
And a more prosperous future. That's a legacy we could be proud of.
Over 1,000 people in the UK died in just a few days because of the 40-degree heat, because of the climate crisis, which is fueled by oil, gas, coal, fossil fuels. And our government, they want more. It is an act of murder. And this is an act of self-defense. And we need you to join us in order for this to work, in order for our murderous government to take action and listen. How many more people in Pakistan, in Nigeria have to die before they listen, even in the UK? We will stop as soon as the government stop new oil and gas. Please join us. Civil resistance is all we have left.
The Oscar goes to Natalie Portman, everybody. Natalie Portman gets the Oscar.
See, this is the problem. Can't we get less off-putting activists? Come on, man. I mean, they've got to exist. Can't we find sympathetic people to speak for the cause? Can't we find people who are not bound to make people say, so what do the other guys think about this?
Yeah. I mean, literally, that felt like Natalie Portman had to do it, you know?
Yeah, she was having her moment.
Yeah, it was like a black swan scene. It was good.
Yeah, she was emoting.
Yep, very much so. You know, let's look at what else has been happening, if it'll let me. There we go. So, meanwhile, what happens to Rishi? He's rushed off the stage. Oh, what happened? What happened? He got rushed off stage. Why would they do that?
He ate too much tikka masala.
Tikka masala. We're in Egypt, right? What would we have in Egypt? Like hummus, delicious.
Sure, but that
falafel. Yeah,
they're the only ones who make it with fava beans. So.
Okay.
Everyone else makes it with chickpeas.
Obviously, with Chianti on the side, you know.
Nice Chianti, yeah.
There he is. He's got to get out of there. Why is he? Come on, let's go.
That's his wife with him.
No,
is that his wife?
Yeah, looks like it.
Well, the pound.
I did not know that.
He's probably going and transferring his currency to the yuan.
That's probably what it is. He's got a couple of offshore accounts he needed to like shore up a little bit.
So motherfuckers keep super chatting us with that because they know it's not going to be worth anything tomorrow.
Here's one of the reasons he was moving so fast. Vice News Matthew Casel tried to ask the British Prime Minister to comment on a law that Arab Spring guy we heard about earlier. Sunak is literally running away. And pay attention to Collin, who's saying his wife, what she has to say during this altercation. And action.
Is there sound for this?
Prime Minister Sunak, are you going to demand Alaa Abdel Fattah's release from prison? There's a British citizen on hunger strike in prison. Are you demanding his release?
We've already done a pooled clip that you can have an international pooled clip you can have access to.
What will be the British government's response if a UK citizen dies in prison? Are you going to demand that Egypt release British citizen Alaa Abdel Fattah from prison? Prime Minister Sunak, can you make a comment on that? Can he make a comment on it now? Prime Minister Sunak, just a comment on the British citizen. A comment on the British citizen who's right now on hunger strike.
So yeah, not liking that question at all. And there's an international poll clip you can use that'll explain everything. I'm sure it will. Yeah. So fun stuff. So we also have this guy show up. President Macron addresses Venezuelan President Maduro at COP27. Not so long ago, Maduro was an evil dictator, but today there are many barrels of oil. Times are a-changin'. So here they are in case you need a video proof. You know, there's Macron. I like the translator. ¿Cómo estás? Excelente. Cada vez mejor. You know, I like how translation is in Spanish because we all know Spanish. You guys know Spanish, right?
I do.
Proud of you. Now you can translate for the rest of us who don't. You know, it's okay. They didn't talk very much. You heard what they said.
Said, how are you? What time is best?
Yep.
When is best?
Sí, él me dice, sí, tenemos buenos amigos en común. Nous avons de très bons amis en commun. Exactement. Et là maintenant, le continent va en train de se recomposer. Se está recomponiendo.
It's going too fast.
Yeah, I think they're talking about oil and stuff, if I remember correct. France tiene que jugar un papel positivo. What?
France has the paper. It's positive.
Yeah.
France has the paper that's positive. But
luckily,
God, that's play.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
Tiene, Prince tiene que. Tiene's like what, right?
Well, no. Tiene is France has.
That's it.
Francia tiene. France has.
The play on paper.
The play on paper.
What play?
Is positive. That's the part I don't get. The play part. Like
yeah,
what?
That's weird way to say that.
He give them a play. What is it?
It might be something specifically.
I'm intermediate. I'm not
right. I'm terrible too. So, Venezuela's Maduro goes from being on U.S. wanted list in 2020 with a $15 million reward for his capture to shaking hands with John Kerry in 2022. Video from Egypt today at COP27. Here he is meeting with Kerry. Which like, when's the last time you seen him rolled out? Been a minute. Which you know who he was there with? Like, he was there with well, first he was there with Bloomberg. We'll get to it in a minute. Bloomberg showed up too. It's just a party all around. But luckily, Kawasishu News is much better at their Spanish translations than we are. So we get some of his speech translated for us, which he mentions that capitalism is the cause of environmental disaster. At least someone's saying it.
Será inútil, como ha sido hasta ahora, cualquier esfuerzo que emprendamos para paliar las consecuencias de este desastre ambiental si no tenemos el coraje de reconocer que esa y no otra es la causa del desastre que se avecina. El capitalismo consumista, el capitalismo voraz, depredador y destructor.
Any questions?
Glad he said it, but no one's listening to him.
No, we are, which is nice, you know.
I gotta say, this is more complicated than I expected. I thought COP27 was the male stripper at Anna Kasparian's bachelorette party. I didn't think it would be this complicated.
Well, I mean,
I didn't prepare.
He was the one with the nice news skirt. What do you want from me? You know, like, but anyway, Venezuela advocates for the protection of the Amazon.
How long were you waiting to say that?
A few minutes. I thought of it a couple minutes ago.
Nice. So here he is talking about the Amazon.
Señor presidente, abogamos como país soberano por la protección de la Amazonía. Venimos de un encuentro con el presidente de Colombia, Gustavo Petro, con el presidente de Surinam, con los movimientos sociales suramericanos, para asumir responsabilidades como habitantes de Suramérica en la salvación de la selva y la biodiversidad del Amazonas. Milenios de existencia han dejado una huella irreparable en el Amazonas. Por el contrario, creemos que son los pueblos originarios quienes deben enseñarnos cómo salvar y cómo convivir con la naturaleza. Las culturas ancestrales y originarias de todo un continente, de los indios originarios Sioux del norte de América hasta los Yanomamis de la selva amazónica, han concebido siempre a la tierra y a la selva como un ser vivo que siente y piensa como nosotros. Despertemos a esa verdad y salgamos de la arrogancia antropocéntrica que nos impide ver lo sagrado que es el mundo.
I mean,
Kelly in the chat is saying, I keep waiting to see small red sniper dots. His face is no, that's not going to happen because he's validating them, you know, in terms of him speaking all of this.
Yeah, he's here.
So, no, they're not going to snipe him down for that. If anything, they're grateful for him for this. You know, so.
Well, you know, Canada brought some oil and gas representatives in its delegation, in case people wanted to know what they were up to while they were here. But Trudeau's not there because I think at the last COP he didn't have a good time. You know, but meanwhile, Mikhail Bloomberg today at COP27 joined Climate Envoy to announce SCALE, the Subnational Climate Action Leaders Exchange. By partnering with the State Department, cities, states, and regions will have new opportunities to lead the world into a resilient net zero future. So great ad copy from Mike. You know, did good work reading that script.
He would have been a great president.
I'm sure, yeah, with his billions of dollars in exploitation.
Then at least Abrams would have gotten a cabinet position.
Exactly. You know, and he would have been on Star Trek too. God. I'm
pleased to announce that the United States State Department and the Bloomberg Philanthropies are together supporting the launch of a new effort to take subnational climate action up to the next level. They are going to support cities, states, and regions in the development and implementation of net zero policy. And they're going to help to change our entire approach.
John, thank you for your leadership and partnership on climate change. We launched America's All In, and we brought together cities and states, businesses and universities, tribal nations and religious institutions. Together we showed the world that the American people remain committed to fighting climate change. Partnerships and along with national governments, cities, states, and businesses, that if they add up together, they really can make a big difference.
I want to thank Coca-Cola for sponsoring this event. I know I tried to put you out of business a couple years back. Nice and we'd also move on from that.
We'd also like to make
who played Bloomberg on SNL. I can't
remember.
It was Fred.
We'd also like to thank Mentos, the fresh maker. Like, You know.
Well, this is. I mean, I criticized certain elements of it. Me and Keaton, you know, that was the first fight in our marriage, I think, over Michael Moore's Planet of the Humans. But you know, that was something that the film focused on that nobody else has really dealt with.
Yeah, I
Like,
love that movie, and Russell didn't like it, but yeah, I mean,
no.
that's exactly...
I liked certain things. There were certain things I felt were dishonest, and what pissed me off about it was there were so many great points to make. And when you make a movie that is so going against leftist orthodoxy and dogma, you really need to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. And they didn't. They got things wrong that they could have gotten right. And when you do that, man, you make it so easy for them to discredit the entire movie.
I mean, I watched it again, and you know, I don't want to rehash the argument, but when I watched it again, it was pretty obvious that they were telling a sequence of events dating back from his early days of environmental activism through the present. It was pretty obvious, even though they didn't put title cards with certain dates on certain things, because the charge against that movie was that some of the arguments they were making were dated. But you know, he goes back, oh yeah, in the 90s, I went to, you know, I started in Vermont and I went to this, you know, green energy concert or whatever. And you know, it's pretty clear that this happened a long time ago. So anyway, whatever.
No,
but
I mean,
it did focus on how a lot of these
on shit
leading
like this,
figures and a lot of these environmental movements are really just for show. Like it's just a PR opportunity for them. It's a
way for billionaires like Mike Bloomberg to buy some goodwill with the public, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're not bad actors. We're saving the planet. So let us keep our money. What are you going to tax us? We're saving the world. Would you tax Superman? No.
Right.
Kelly in the chat asks, so were there any actual climate activists there? You know, I looked for how long?
Only that really off-putting one.
Yes. Well, she wasn't even there. She was still in England. You know, she couldn't make it.
She wasn't even there.
Yeah.
Well, at least she didn't take the private jet, so
yes,
for ideological consistency.
Exactly.
Look, if you want, why don't you guys go after Mondrian? I fucking hate Mondrian. Fucking leave Van Gogh alone.
Yeah, I looked for a while and didn't see many. But who I did see, along with John Kerry, was World Bank President David Malpass, who's presenting the new Scale Trust Fund for results-based climate finance. Whatever the fuck that means. But
sounds good. It sounds good. Sounds like something's happening.
Here's what he's going to tell you it means.
This is the missing piece for the world community. Scale will help countries build a track record of projects that unlock private sector financing for international carbon markets.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. What does that mean? Can anyone explain? Okay. Like, whatever that meant.
I thought this was a segment about a male stripper.
Yes.
Unless you
my
had,
pay grade.
Yeah, unless you had like an international law about cap and trade, like I don't know what that means.
Yeah. So what it might mean is that like Ramaphosa, South African. I see. Every time I say South African, it happens. You know, but needs 90 trillion for just energy transition. So that's probably what those scale trust funds are going to be for, similar to how people have accused both Russia and China of economically courting the global south here. So does the goose, does the United States. So yeah, economic warfare. Woo! Yay. But which he all met with this nice hair lady. everyone knows this hair lady. This is von der Leyen, right? German prime minister, not prime minister, like underneath
Chancellor.
Merkeler. Yeah. Chancellor, whatever. Führer. I mean, Germans have weird leader names. All right. What do you want from me? You know? But yeah, here's Ramaphosa getting the double kissies. He got like the European kissy going on. Oh, Carrie gets a double kissy. She's like, only two. Only two. You remember what happened last time? You know, just 2 kissies. Like, also, it wasn't Rishi. Rishi snuck in there. He got to join the cool kids club.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Like
yep.
posing.
He was hitting his like Burlington Coat Factory sit.
Like, I am more convinced now that man. There's a camera that man doesn't like. He knows. He's just kind of like,
he knows where that camera is. He's like, yeah, I see you. I got you. Look at you, looking so good, being a camera and shit. You know? So there's a few people that might question and voice some opposite opinions here. So Economic Freedom Fighters says Ramaphosa has once again committed to destroy South Africa's coal industry to his imperialist handlers in COP27. We must defend the coal industry from hypocrites of the West who built their economies on coal and today want to tell us that we must abandon it. And action.
And there is no coal, by the way, that is going to be closed here by Cyril Ramaphosa and his friends. If they close it, we open it. And we'll sell to whoever we want to sell to. We're not going to listen to that nonsense. People can't build their economy through coal. And then when they are well off, come and say to us, no, you need to close coal. We agree that eventually it will happen. But it can't be abrupt thing that we are just told, hey, everything is done, we're going to give you millions. Go. No, we're not going to do that. We need to protect our coal industry, because to close it will be to close the economy of many of our provinces. So we're not going to allow that. But
thoughts, Collin? Anything
on this or
yes?
Or...
Sure.
This is hell. Just you know, like it just reminds me. Honestly, it just reminds me of college. You know, being in a room with all these hobnob, neoliberal fuckers. You know, talking a good game as far as like, yeah, no, it literally like I'm having flashbacks right now, which is kind of scary. But it just reminds me of that, just in terms of like, you know, these rich bastards who are talking about like, for me, because I went to Boston College, you know, like talking about, oh, like I'm going to, you know, going to build houses down south for spring break, you know, as, you know, like, because that's my good deed, you know, or that kind of bullshit that, you know, that I was kind of subjected to, you know, in college. This is what this reminds me of. It's the idea of like, these rich bastards are getting into the room in the guise of, you know, talking about climate change when they're doing it for profit for themselves, and exploiting their constituencies in their countries from it. This is just what this reminds me of. So,
well, there's a writer. His name is Anand Giridharadas, I think his name is. I forget. I don't know how to say his last name. He wrote a great book. Giridharadas. He wrote a great book called "Winners Take All: The Elite Charade of Changing the World," and it was all about this. It was all about how the elites try to create the impression that they are needed and that they can be partnered with to create positive change. And they create this whole setup to convince people that they are allies of the ordinary person in creating a better world. And what that does is it neutralizes the idea that there is a power struggle to be had between elites and ordinary people, right? This doesn't have to be conflict. This doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship. We can be partners.
Right.
Right.
But I think also just
Well,
as far, like
he gets into how it starts in the universities, like how at one time social justice oriented people would have been looking to go into social work and political activism, and basically these corporations go in and they sponsor workshops and they sponsor college departments, and these kids are convinced that the way to solve these problems is through a startup.
Yeah.
To do it through capitalism.
So anyway, as we head over to more of the global south, we head to Zimbabwe, who their president, Collin, I'm gonna let you run with this one.
Nope.
No, you can't. Nope. You can't nope on that. These are nope.
Nope.
I think it's Mnangagwa. I think.
Sure. Sure.
I think.
Sure. Like, I love how you give me the African names as if you think that I can.
Yes. International black man Collin, who's been to Africa.
Black man Collin, who has very like far removed from his African ancestry, who cannot read these names for shit. So
not my fault,
sorry.
brother. Not my fault. You should have been knowing. You should know all the languages by now. You are failing your people. What are you doing?
Well, Zimbabwe's not my people, so there you go. So
truth. You know. What you mean? You mean y'all don't talk the same language? What? Anyway, luckily
our friend.
They also tend to speak English, you know.
Yes. Sound, sir.
Goals were it not for the albatross of illegal economic sanctions imposed on our country. We demand the immediate lifting of these unwarranted and punitive sanctions. Zimbabwe is committed to be a friend to all and an enemy to none. And we are ready to play our part in addressing climate change and other challenges that face our world. In conclusion, Your Excellency, at this COP27, let us from the developing world act as a countermanding bloc of victims of climate change. We need to negotiate and vote as a bloc through the group of 77 plus China. Only then are we likely to carry the day. We can and must act now to secure a healthy planet for the present and the future generations. I thank you.
Yeah.
Albatross. The global South calls out the West.
Isn't it nice?
Like, you Western devils. Like,
you imperialist motherfuckers. Like, that shit. You know, the albatross around their neck of economic sanctions. Right. Also, like, why'd they put the echo on them like that? I mean, come on, audio guy.
Oh, that wasn't you.
No, that was just I think it's just the space of the room, but yes. But yeah. So we saw this lady here earlier. She was allowed to open her face hole for some reason. 2022 brought tectonic changes in the global energy system. Europe is shifting fast from Russian scum fossil fuels to renewables. This is unique growth opportunity for our trusted partners, especially in the global south.
Who have nothing to do with you at this point.
Yeah, you mean the ones you exploit? Those people that Those
Right.
people. Okay. We'll let her remember that part.
Opponent in that. So, Madam President.
Thank you so much indeed. First of all, I want to thank you, Mr. President, and you, Mr. Chancellor, for this roundtable, the invitation to the roundtable. It is absolutely the right topic at the right time. Because I think what we see the year 2022, there are tectonic changes in the energy market. It has to do, of course, with the war that Russia unleashed against Ukraine. 8 months ago, the war started, and since then we've seen skyrocketing prices for fossil.
Climate change started by Russia. FYI, the Russians did it. Started at the war in Ukraine. Climate change. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it started with.
Really, Peter the Great.
Yes. Yeah. You get where I'm going here. You know. But anyway, she continues.
Fuels. The driver for that is the fact that Russia has cut 80% of the pipeline gas to the European Union.
How'd that happen though? But how'd that? But like somewhere in a sea with a pipeline, Navy SEAL team and some explosives. Is that what we're talking about? That one right there. They shot themselves out of a torpedo tube in their little sub. We know how this goes. You know, like we've seen G.I. Joe. We know what underwater man can do. You know.
You must know that before the war, Russia was the biggest supplier of fossil fuel energy worldwide, and the European Union was the biggest customer.
The bigot. There was a bit of a Freudian slip on that. She said the European Union was the bigot. I just wanted to point that out. I did not catch that the first time.
And what we did is we diversified to trusted partners. We did a lot of saving, minus 15%. But the most important is acceleration, scaling up in renewable energy. And that's why this high-level roundtable is so on the spot today. And I do not want to focus on the European domestic elements. The Chancellor has already rightly so described our goals in the European Union for green hydrogen. We have a huge investment package domestically for, we call it Repower EU, 300 billion. But I want to focus on what we're doing abroad. And here you must see this whole energy demand that was once from...
They're doing abroad. I mean, it's like 2022. We got to quit using this language. Like, we really do. It's sexist. It's wrong. Like, you can't be talking about women are women, not broads. Come on.
Russia is now shifting, if we do it right, into the global south. Because the demand should go into renewable energy, clean energy. Every kilowatt hour of renewable energy that we produce is not only good for the climate, but it's also good for our independence and our security of supply.
What? That's what it's about. Not climate. It's about their security. Like saying the quiet part.
Right. Yeah. Isn't this what it has been about this whole time?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Resource control. Yes. Yeah.
And that's why this moment is so decisive. To look at the global south. You have the resources in abundance.
And we want them. And we want them.
Yo, like...
Yeah.
What is necessary is the investment and the infrastructure. And that's where we have to team up. And therefore,
we got to team up. Like an Avengers movie. We got to team up. Wakanda, Captain America.
Like, this pause here for a second.
Yeah.
Having spent time in Africa, this is what makes this especially heinous to me, given like some of the African leaders who will go for this, and I'm not going to say the names right now because I know like I have friends who like certain, African, leaders, and I don't want to upset them, but this is kind of what my concern is that especially in one of the more savvy ones have one foot in terms of like, for their people or whatever, and then the other foot into this bullshit. And and it's like, and I've said this to you, Reef, the idea like in certain countries, it's like it's the illusion of, this country is doing well, or this town or city is doing well, and it's great for the people, when it really isn't for them. It's for these fuckheads like this, who are looking to try and come in and invest, and obviously try to exploit, the resources in these countries for their benefit. So, she's saying the quiet part, but again, it's like in a room with rich fuckers.
Yeah,
who,
she's
playing
her role of Hunger Game villain well.
Right. There's no reason for them to have filter here. So it's kind of like,
yes,
I'm just surprised that they got this on camera. So as if like people like on like us are not commenting on this.
Oh, and this
think, again,
this
okay
stuff
because
this stuff right here is going to be another one of those resources they're looking for.
actually, now that I'm thinking about it, has this conference been reported on in mainstream media at all?
Not really. I mean, other than like, John Kerry went to the thing today and shook hands with like that. Like, that's it. Biden's going to show up. They're going to point him in a direction. He's going to go the wrong way.
Right. So yeah, it's just like, and of course, people are going to be distracted, obviously with the elections here. But like, yeah, it's like, but they're free to say this shit because they know like it's basically they basically just as well like not have any cameras there.
Yeah,
they can just blatantly say what they want to do without any consequence.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, great.
All right, fellas, we got to tip out. Keaton's got babies, and I got work in the morning.
Yes, sir. Understood. We got you.
Big emphasis is on renewable energy.
But we should let people plug before you leave. And we'll finish
let's
up.
pause it for a second. Yeah, and I'm actually getting tired of this too. But
it's almost done. I promise. There's like 2 slides left, I think.
So, but guys, thank you so much. I mean, considering like how long streams
yes
you've been doing,
we talk too much.
We
That's
talk
what
too much, but
we're becoming like Max Headroom at this point.
But,
we only exist digitally.
But,
exactly.
But that being said, enjoyable stream. Thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Tell people where they can find you.
This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And here, I'll put our plugs in the chat here.
Yeah.
YouTube.com/see do dissidence, and you can sign up at our Substack for free. Obviously, you guys are on Substack too, so you know how that works.
Yes, sir. Anything you'd like to add, Russell?
I don't think you need to do that, Keaton, because I listed everything, like your Facebook,
okay, cool.
Your website, your Twitter.
Yeah,
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Down in that doobly-doo.
So, like I said, guys, follow these guys, like they're doing good work. And they have great streams. I've been watching them, for the last month. So we've really been happy.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's really good.
So
yes,
subscribe to them, give them support. They're doing great work. And so, yeah, you guys need to go because you got a baby, and I know you got.
Well, I got to pick somebody up at the.
I got an 8-hour stream yesterday.
Yeah, I've and then we
went on again.
Literally, this is true. In the last 48 hours, I've live streamed for triple the amount of time that I've slept. I got to pick up my friend at the airport tomorrow at 9:30, so I got to be out of here by 6:30.
Yes, sir. All right.
Yeah, this benefits you two guys too. So, but yeah, we.
Oh no, it was a lot of fun, man. Thank you guys so much. It was great to meet you guys. You guys were great on our show. We should partner up again. Absolutely.
Definitely.
We'll do, man. All right, fam.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
night.
Have a good
All
night.
right. Thank
All right,
you,
have a
guys.
great rest of the show, guys. Thank you so much.
You too.
Good night.
Bye-byes. How about that? Is that nice?
Oh, interception. Yeah.
Interception. I can fix that. I need to set buttons to fix that so it's a little easier to fix. You know what I mean? Like now I gotta go down to like this where's it at? I know where it's at. Oh god, that's not good. How about that? That better? You guys like seeing me instead of the internal pit of hell that just happened? But anyway, back to the shows. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. I know how to do things. I've been pressing buttons all night. Let's go here, Care Bear, and finish this up, shall we?
So again, if we do it right right now, we have the investment offensive now in clean green hydrogen.
Again, investment. What was that word? Offensive. Investment offensive.
During this COP, we're signing hydrogen partnerships with Egypt, with Kazakhstan, with Namibia, for example. And
just to name a few, Kazakhstan is nice.
Very important is, yes, there is public money, but we also, of course, need the engagement of the private sector. Because
private sector needs to be in on this. Right? Got to have capitalism involved. Got to have that. Very important part. And hydrogen. What was that? You remember the Hindenburg, Collin?
Yeah.
You know what that was made out of?
Nitrogen.
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen. Yeah.
There you go. we got like the two elements up top. We got like helium and then hydrogen. Helium, nice and safe, put in kids' balloons and shit. Right? Hydrogen, highly explosive and flammable. That thing. Real reactive. Hydrogen. Like we make bombs out of it. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
The hydrogen ones. Those ones.
Because the idea is for true partnership, that is at eyes level, that the technology goes to the global south, that the skills are developed in the global south. That's important.
And the resources come to us.
Of course, we invest in the infrastructure, the interconnectors, pipelines that have to be hydrogen ready.
That get the resources to us.
You name it. But important is that it is not a one-way, but a joint endeavor that we are engaging in together. So
because two-way streets mean stuff comes to us easier. Two ways. You know?
So my message is here. Thank you very much for this very timely high-level roundtable. It's
like at a not round table, but yes. Anyway, there's more, Collin. There's more. Not from this video,
much
though.
more, honestly.
Not much. We're almost done. So let us not take the highway to hell. Let us earn the clean ticket to heaven. Europe is staying the course, so let us do this journey together. We got this one, and there's one more slide after this.
In February, in the same week that Russia invaded Ukraine, the IPCC issued a stark warning to the global community. Its message could not have been clearer. The climate is changing faster than our capacity to adapt. So the world must deliver better and faster. The global fossil fuel crisis must be a game changer. And my friends, let us not take the highway to hell.
Let us take the stairway to heaven is obviously the next line.
Let us earn the clean ticket to heaven. That is our responsibility. And for Europe, the answer is Repower EU. We're not just cutting our dependency on Russian fossil fuels. That is good, but that is...
That's good. Okay.
Not enough.
Not
but
enough.
we're massively accelerating the rollout of renewables. We urge our partners in the global north to step up their climate finance to the global south.
Not only do they urge themselves, but their global northern partners. Correct? Correct. Moving on.
Team Europe is providing its fair share of the $100 billion promise. For the second year in a row, we have exceeded 23 billion euros, despite the COVID pandemic, despite the Russian war. And a big bulk of our climate finance goes already to adaptation. So it is doable, and we call on others to step up too. My message to you today is, Europe is staying the course, so let's do this journey together. Thank you so much.
Do you want to do it together with them, Collin?
No.
Okay.
In February.
You know who did do it together with them? This guy. This guy showed up. This is the last one. Told leaders at COP27 via video that climate policy is a moot point unless there's peace on Earth. Because Russia's war in his country has forced countries to resume coal-fired power generation to lower energy prices. So, a little bit of like, don't see what we're doing, but like, you do you. We got to burn coal because, you know, Russia, obviously. You know? So, here he is in all his like 30 seconds of glory.
There can be no effective climate policy without the peace on the earth, because in fact nations are thinking only about how to protect themselves here and now from the threats created in particular by the Russian aggression. Russia needs to shut the guns and hide its missiles so the world finally hears what we can all really do together to save ourselves from the climate disaster.
So again,
and yet you're taking money for weapons.
Yes. Yes. Yes, been shelling the Donbass for the last 9 years, but Russia hid its missiles.
Right.
And somehow the Russian aggression is like stopping climate change from being fixed.
What? The effing F?
What?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, these are the rich kids in a room by themselves without any camera. I mean, there were cameras there, but no one in the general public is going to see this. So,
no.
You know, like, they have carte blanche to say whatever they want. So they just made it very blatant as far as what their plans were. I mean, again, shout out to countries in Latin America and, you know, and Africa for at least trying to call this out. But you can also argue they probably just said it just in the guise or the illusion that they actually care, you know, when they're nearly not going to do much, well, with a few exceptions, won't do much either. So, you know, so yeah, it's just, just the rich kids in the room just talking about the trouble they're going to get into. And no one will know what they're doing. The end.
Yes.
That's essentially what
we have. The faces of the WEF. We have, you know, like multiple members of the, what was it? The Committee for Inclusive Capitalism there. You know, I'm sure some Rothschilds were in and about. But yeah. Ridiculous. At least the global south were like, yeah, fuck you. Like that's pretty much what I heard from them, you know? Yeah. So like, or give us money, Like that's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Which I urge the global south to maybe not. Maybe not.
Right.
You know?
Well, I think it's not that it's difficult. Well, it is difficult, but I think again, this is just more of a call, again, for independent media to kind of call this out. I think especially in terms of our audiences, just to kind of share, this is what's happening, behind closed doors. Like, this just kind of reminds me of what Biden might say in public in front of his donors. This is exactly what this is.
Yeah.
You can imagine these are the type of conversations that Biden and our politicians have, like within Congress or wherever they are.
Well, and there's a lot of stuff that like they've been saying, a lot of people have been saying beforehand that is now kind of being slipped out there to be like, oh, here you go,
Right.
And
But I
like,
think,
well,
again, it's just a matter of who, kind of takes that on to kind of call this out and
is paying attention. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I
But
agree.
yeah, it's just sad that again, like 99% of the world is not going to be aware of this at all. Because as I said, I haven't heard about this in mainstream media other than maybe like a blurb about it, but
Yeah.
not necessarily the contents of this. So
Yep. And there's a lot of narratives being managed and a lot of things going on. But anyway, I feel like
you're done. You're done.
Yes. Yes, I'm very done. This was our longest stream.
Yes.
I mean,
I didn't
good,
mean it
but
that way.
Given the content, but this
Yes.
is a long stream.
Yeah, we talk a lot. I'm sorry, everyone. I appreciate everyone who stayed here with us, we did pretty well. In that regard. So appreciate the fam sticking around. But what do we got coming up? I know there's streams of Tara coming out soon. People should watch that. Not sure when that is. I usually we do them Thursday, but sometimes depending on guests that gets a little weird. So we'll see.
Yeah, Reef After Dark this week? No.
I think I might try to pre-record one for our Anna Schmercery event,
Mm-hmm.
So but I'll see. I'm gonna figure that out tomorrow. But otherwise, check out Oz Saturday on Roar Media. That's always a good time over there. So secret shows Friday and Sunday, they're usually there. And I think Warren's starting to do stuff Monday for Extra Polo.
So he's going to be ideally on Monday night. So I was on with him this Monday. You can check our channel for that interview that I did with him. But yeah, that's the goal. I think ideally he wants to do interviews on Mondays.
Day before that, how do we miss that?
How do we miss that with you
Yep.
and Indy? We'll be back here again next week. We have one person confirmed in 2 weeks. We won't say who yet. But if not, other than that, we'll be back here next week. Probably just the two of us, unless we get somebody people that we know
Just the two of us.
So,
well,
but
sounds good to me. Yeah, it was great.
And and Fortune tried to do this sooner, but we actually have some music.
Yeah, we do.
For our closing credits. So actually, that's something we're kind of working on now. So
yep, we're trying to get an intro made. Gonna be good.
You get to hear a 15-second
teaser. That's what the Hollywood calls those.
Thanks to our friend, to the network, GJ Nice, who produced this. He didn't produce it for us, but he gave this to us. So I really appreciate him for doing that. And
just remember, constant polishing can turn turds into like diamonds. You know what I'm saying? Like you just gotta like keep polishing, but accompanied by a lot of pressure usually. But everyone should check out indienews.network. You see that scrolling across there. Find all the links to all the members of INN. Should be right there. You click that Meet the Members section. It's right there for use, as well as all the ways to support the channel. We always appreciate some financial support.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
You know what I'm saying? Speaking of financial support, we got, where's it at? On Rockfin?
On the Rockfin.
We got $100 tip on the Rockfin. I know,
really?
huh? Yes, sir.
Who's that from?
I think it is, I'm looking. How do I look at just tips on Rockfin? How does that work? Oh, there it is. ARIM. In recognition of. Appreciate it, ARIM. You know?
Thank you. That's
that's nice of you. We never get financial support. That's nice.
Speaking of financial support,
exactly.
Speaking of, thank you guys, for sharing us, liking us, subbing to us. We're just about there for 800 subs, so we need just shy of 200 more to hit our 1,000K goal. Ideally, we want to hit that goal by Christmas. So, so not sure if that's going to happen, but definitely like in the beginning of the new year, like we want to hit that. So, so again, the more that we're able to be monetized, the more that we're able to produce more content, the more that we're able to try and bring more people on to help bring more content to the show, but then also, being able to have more opportunities to have guests like Keaton and Russell like tonight. And they were amazing. And as I said, you guys should subscribe to them, listen to them, follow them, all the things. And as I said, there are links to everything is in the description below. So
right down there.
Support others in independent media who are trying to do the work that we're trying to do.
Yep. Congrats to RBN for hitting 25K today.
Yes.
That's pretty good of them. But anyway, I'm trying to think if we're forgetting anything. I don't think so. I think we got to everything.
Other than, as you mentioned, our anniversary stream. Stay on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
Probably going to be next weekend. So look for more information for that within the next few days. And
yes, sir.
On Twitter.
We're almost at 1K by the end of the year. That would be nice. That would be nice. But we're close. So if you haven't subbed, hit that sub right down there. That would be, we'd appreciate that. So you guys are already crushing the watch hours. Already doing that great. Appreciate you. But anyway, I think that's our show. As always, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Good night. Have a good week.
Yeah.
Bye. Have a great time.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.